Hello again, friends! And you are our friends, and welcome back to another edition of Jim Cornette's Drive Thru right here on this late Falls Day, 2022. We are in the month of December. There's a man laughing already behind me. I'm your host, the great Brian Last. We have a lot of questions. And of course, the big Survivor Series review with this man, the man who reviewed the Survivor Series, Mr. Jim Cornette.
What in the pea-picking world are you blithering about?
The same
First,
crap I do
it's a fine Falls day right here at Niagara Falls, and then a review of the Survivor Series, which we have talked about, we're going to talk about a couple of weeks ago. Where are you? What, are you in a time warp? Are you ill? I was the one that was sick last week.
I thought you left it with you were going to watch the Austin Theory match.
And fuck, that was before I got the fucking flu. That was 2 weeks ago.
Well, you didn't declare that. You have to declare that. Otherwise, I think you're going to return.
What is this, customs? I've got to declare it. Do you have anything to declare? Yeah, I'm glad to be leaving this shitty country. I said that one time.
Give me a break. You can't get through customs.
I did back then. One of the first times we went to Canada it was for the WWFs. I'd been there for Crockett a couple of times, and we were leaving, and it had been a long television taping and pay-per-view stretch or whatever the fuck. And I'm going back through customs, and where they have ridiculous customs and habits. But anyway, the guy said, "Do you have anything to declare?" And I said, what that means in English is, apparently, did you purchase anything here in our fine country that you're taking back home with you? But he said, "Do you have anything to declare?" I said, "Yeah, I'm glad to be going home." He said, "Do you have anything to declare here?" I said, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Did you purchase anything while you were here?" I said, "No." And then he gets quizzical with me like, "Well, that's just bullshit. How long you been here? 3 or 4 days? You didn't buy anything." I said, "I bought fucking food. Can't really show that to you. I didn't make a list of what I ate. You didn't purchase anything else. This magazine, this fucking Newsweek magazine sitting right here on my bag. I just bought that." I said, "I didn't come here for a vacation. I was told to come here. I was instructed to come here. And I was told that I would be paid money if I came here. That's why I came here. Now I'm going home because I'm sick of being here." He got lippy with me.
And they never forgot that, did they?
Well, they hold a grudge up. They hold a grudge like I do. You know, that's one good thing I can say about the Canadian customs pig. Canadians are fine people. Where they get these pricks to work on the border, I got no idea. Either way, going there, coming back, whichever side's ours, whichever side's theirs, they're all a bunch of flaming uncircumcised pricks.
So you and Mr. Money can't get back into Canada?
Well, no, the cat's okay.
The cat was deported.
Was the cat? No, the cat was only deported because the cat didn't have any adult supervision with it.
The cat had 2 adults with it.
But one of them went to jail, and the other one was kicked back out of the country also. So the cat had to go with the non-incarcerated person.
I don't think that's why the cat was sent back. I think there was some sort of paperwork issue with the cat, and they refused to allow it into Canada.
Can you bar a cat from Canada?
You could bar any animal from a country. You can't say, bring that elephant over here. A
specific animal. Well, you can say, well, you can't bring snakes to Hawaii or whatever. But can you bar a specific animal? Like this specific fucking bunny rabbit has committed heinous crimes and will not be allowed into Bulgaria anymore.
I would assume who knows about Bulgaria, but I would assume around the world it's rarely done. Although maybe it's possible. Maybe you can ban an animal by name. Rover
so basically, basically, this is the fucking intro to the show that you came up with when you already off-air shot down my goddamn suggestion for a television program that's in its new season that I was going to talk about. Yeah, I haven't had time to watch anything.
Well, I wasn't going to watch it even if I had the time because I never even heard of it. But go talk about your television program. This isn't what I came up with. I was letting the conversation flow.
You were boy, it was a pretty heavy flow.
That's what she
I'm
said.
not even going to talk about my TV show now because you've already insulted me and insulted it and say you wouldn't watch it even if you tried.
Well, I'm backed up
Well,
on
I'm
shows.
going to save it for the experience.
I'm backed up on shows. I have my shows.
You're backed up all right.
Yeah.
How about have you been watching the news? The world is safe for democracy in Georgia again, just barely. I'll get this out of the way because I'm pissed about it. Sometimes people like it when I'm pissed. I don't care whether they like it or not. For the folks again around the world, I shall try to explain this to you. There was an election in Georgia yesterday, a special election, because the results from November were too close. They've got a rule that one candidate has to get over 50% of the vote, and there was an independent in there that got 2.2% and gummed the whole goddamn works up. That's all they're good for, the independents, is to get in the fucking way. So they have the big runoff, and it's between Raphael Warnock, who's been a senator in Georgia for the past couple of years and now is running for his first full term, and he was running against Herschel Walker, the ex-college and pro football star of 40 years ago.
Who lives in Texas.
Who doesn't live in the state of Georgia. Exactly. He lives in Texas, and here's the deal. And again, the Republicans, the gall of them, as Jackie Fargo once said about Jimmy Hart, the gall of you, they run joke candidates as publicity stunts, thinking that they're counter-programming the legitimate candidate on the Democratic side by either their same sex or their same color. They did it with Sarah Palin became a known thing in the world, and that's probably the best way you can describe her, because in 2008, the Republicans thought they were going to be running against Hillary Clinton. They didn't see the Obama Express steaming down on them, baby. They thought they were going to be, so they give, and he admitted this before he died, John McCain, one of the big Republicans. He had a little more honor and courage than to call himself a Republican today with the way that the maggots have taken over things. But nevertheless, John McCain admitted the party foisted Sarah Palin onto him. She was a blithering simpleton who knew absolutely nothing about anything and had a trailer park trash family straight out of off the cover of Meth Head Times. But the Republicans figured she's got a vagina, so the women will vote for her instead of Hillary. Well, how's that worked out for you, huh? And it ended up that everybody, by the time the election was over, through no fault of the Republican Party, Sarah Palin did not land in the White House as the Vice President of the United States, but she could have. And they were willing to do that and sacrifice any goddamn honor, integrity, whatever the fuck, for the sake of sticking a publicity stunt in the White House to beat who they thought they were going to run against. And they took women to be that fucking stupid that they would vote for any woman just to get a woman in the White House, because that's the big thing, ignoring the fact that everybody could see, except for the Republicans and their base, that this woman was mentally unfit to run a fucking Walmart. So now they did the same thing. Herschel Walker, it's been a joke in the United States, his speeches. I wish the people around the world Google this. Google any Herschel Walker speech where he was running for Senate in Georgia recently. Besides the fact that you mentioned he lives in Texas. And they moved him to Georgia because that's where he was the football hero. They figured Raphael Warnock, the pastor of Martin Luther King's church, and I don't even like religious people, but goddamn, I can tell you when somebody's smart. He's an intelligent, well-spoken man. He's already been a senator for a couple years. He's devoted his life to public service. He's an honorable man with no scandals or criminal conduct or people in his own family like Herschel Walker had it. Herschel Walker's son said, this has all been a big fucking joke, and nobody should vote for my father. But Raphael Warnock, he's black. So it was almost like you could hear Sheriff Buford T. Justice sitting on the porch. Well, boy, you know they like them football players. We need to get us a football player and we'll breeze right through this sumbitch. It's fucking ridiculous. He's a poster boy for CTE. He was never a noted scholar to begin with, but now he's 60 whatever years old and he can't speak English. He was blathering in public. It was embarrassing. Even members of the Republican Party that have half a fucking spine or what's left of their balls would say this is an unfit candidate. It's not good for our, but they ran him anyway. A blithering simpleton that has no, that also they were running him as the man of God. He'll stand up for Christian value against the preacher that it runs Martin Luther King's church, Ebenezer Baptist Church. Here's Herschel Walker, who's had umpteen kids with umpteen different women, denied most of them, never raised any of them, has paid for several abortions. They provided canceled checks. He's the man of God. The only thing lower than the Republican voters that will fucking put up with this and will vote for a head of cabbage instead of a qualified Democrat because they don't like smart people. They hate to vote for them intelligent people that use them big words. The only thing worse than the voters is the politicians who prop up these joke candidates just to get the fucking majority vote in the Senate to pass their evil fucking plans. Can you imagine the other senators, Democratic and Republican, actually being asked to work with Herschel Walker on a lawmaking basis? We are going to formulate public policy alongside this brain-damaged nitwit that can't formulate fucking words of 3 syllables. Google the speeches if you think I'm goddamn exaggerating. I'm not the first person to bring these things up. I'm not even the first 100,000. The Republicans would run Billy Broccoli, just a head of broccoli. Here he is, vote for him because he won't do the shit the Democrats will do. And the head of broccoli would get 42% of the vote because that's where I was going with this. They cast 3.5 million votes in the state of Georgia. You've got a sitting senator with an impeccable record and a fucking message to people. And he's run against a joke and an idiot, a babbling simpleton who would not have the first idea how to do this fucking job if he got it. And that's the whole idea. The Republicans would be telling him what to do. He'd be a vote, which is the most racist thing of all. Yeah, we're going to fucking put this black guy there and tell him how to do this fucking job. And Warnock won by, last I saw, about 100,000 votes out of 3.5 million. Every white, redneck, beer-bellied, fat nitwit in the state of Georgia would rather vote for somebody that couldn't pass a cognitive test of a 3-year-old than an intelligent, competent, already performing senator because he's a Democrat. And he's too smart for them. They don't like the smart people. Trump made it, goddamn normalized it, but it's always been there. The Republicans don't want people that are smarter than they are involved in making public policy, which is kind of like finding a heart surgeon that's stupider than you are so you can tell him how to operate on your fucking heart. And that's where we are in this country, that it's that close they might as well run a goddamn head of lettuce. And they've showed what they think of women with Sarah Palin and Marjorie Treason Green. She got elected. This blithering nitwit. She's actually there, and they have to put up with her. At least that's the House of Representatives, not the Senate. The bar of the Senate used to be a little higher. They run Herschel Walker to insult the black people in Georgia. Would they run the Frito Bandito in New Mexico? I bet they would, because 42% of the white assholes would vote for him. Because that's all the credit they give the fucking Mexican people. Fuck all of you. Anybody that voted for Herschel Walker rather than a cognizant human being in the state of Georgia to go to the United States Senate and have votes on what's going on in my life, fuck you. How about that? And come see me if you don't fucking like it. Would you rather heard about my TV show, Brian?
This is your show today. Let's hear it.
All righty, but anyway, on to other things. Real quickly, I fucked up. You know what I did?
What'd you do?
Well, goddamn it, the Featherbottoms have been such great people. The whole family have helped me out. You know, this is the first year that the merchandise store at JimCornette.com has been open all year since 2017. Because I started getting slammed, you know, the show got popular, things were happening. And I think in 2021, what did I say? We were open for 21 days. It was fucking horrible, right? And Hotchkiss came in and revamped the website, and Fanny and Felcher have taken over the merchandise, the shipping part of the merchandising, and we've stayed open, and they've instituted all of these gadgets and thingamajigs and the inventories and the confirmations and all that stuff that I could never dream of. And I feel so bad for poor Hotchkiss. He's been having problems. Last week, he came home to a house full of sick children. Just, I mean, high fevers and flus and coughing. He don't know where these fucking kids came from.
I was going to say, wait till his wife finds out.
Well, no, he just opened the door and fuck. They were all there, and so now he's, you know, doing the best he can. But I flummoxed him. You know, we've talked about the brand new Lazy Booking t-shirt that went on sale here a few weeks ago. It has been so popular. And the first Lazy Booking shirts, by the way, are already on their way to the consumers. And for the first time in months, I have signed everything. And everything that has been ordered through December 1st has been signed and boxed and is in the hands of the Featherbottoms. That's like 5 days ago. It's amazing. But we found out something here as it gets close to the end of the year and people have been ordering a variety of things. We were so concerned about the Lazy Booking shirts and make sure we had plenty of them in stock. We did reorder Cornette face shirts, but somehow the inventory machine was off kilter, and come to find out that it was a clerical error on my part, because not being used to all of this electronic mumbo jumbo, I used to kind of just scribble stuff down on paper, right, for myself, or keep it in my head because I was the only one involved. I have a habit, whenever somebody sends, and this happens ever so often, whenever somebody sends me a real cool piece of wrestling memorabilia in the mail or whatever and says, here, I thought you might like to have this because they know I collect all this stuff. Well, I send back something, whether it be a picture or a graphic novel or a action figure or sometimes a t-shirt. And of course, and I do give out, you know, the contractors are over here and the Monroe brothers and all the people been working this year. Every once in a while, somebody says, can I have a t-shirt? Well, sure you can. Well, I never bothered to tell Hotchkiss about these things when I was giving out these free shirts, and he just called me a not a huff, more of a panicked huff, and said, our inventory doesn't match on the face shirts. We've sold out. I said, what? Apparently, over the course of a year, we got a couple dozen off on these things. And so if you are trying to order a Cornette face shirt from JimCornette.com, and get it by Christmas, your window has slammed on your fingers. We are reordering, and Hotchkiss is going to email a few people, a handful of people that we're going to have to make good in some respect and get you your shirt later on or whatever the case. But so you cannot right now probably, and from now until Christmas, order a Cornette face shirt at JimCornette.com. But you can get the fuck out of the lazy booking shirts. You can get those, well, while they last, because goddamn, I don't want to back myself into a corner. But anyway, I've been saying, used to I'd say I'm only one man. Now I'll say I'm only one man, and Hotchkiss is only one man with 9 fingers and a house full of sick kids. So if you haven't got your Christmas order in, please, within the next couple of days, domestically, we've still got time to get things out by Christmas, but we're running out of things to get out.
And if I could say something here, because we forgot to mention it last time, going into 2023, for both the experience and the drive-thru, we're looking for all new music. Because it's been a while, and we've had the song contest going for a while, but we actually need new music, because if you listen to some of the lyrics, they're all great, but they're kind of dated now.
We're starting, because it's like, you know, they're wonderful songs, but there's new things that have happened that we could be commented on and lampooned, as they say. And so we're not trying to slough off any of our previous artists, but we're going to change things up a little bit.
That's right, and that's what it is. Continue to send your parody songs to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com for the song parody contest, and now send new intro and outro songs to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com for the new intro-outro contest. Neither's really a contest, but...
Neither's really a contest, because there's not really a prize and there's not really a competition. It's just...
And this is barely a show.
Do you want 1 million people to hear your music, whether it's good or bad? That's the thing. That's where we're giving you exposure. Who knows? This could be the Schwab's drugstore of the music business with the reach we have with our podcast, that somebody could, some undiscovered artist. That's why with the original stuff, people can let their creativity run rampant. Or they can keep it bottled up and fucking get an ulcer. I don't care. It's your program.
I'm going to try to save it. I'm going to try, because
did we talk about my merchandise?
Yes, we did.
We couldn't talk about my TV show. I'm just going to circle that. We'll save that for the JCE. By the way, the Trump Organization, guilty on all counts. I won't go further in. I just wanted to say that out loud. Guilty on every charge. What else we got here?
Well, since we didn't watch any WWE TV this week, you did bring up something to me before the show about this Vince McMahon documentary.
Oh, my friends at Vice, they're letting me down. I need to do a seminar with the Vice people on promotion, because apparently they are working or have been working on a Vince McMahon documentary. And it's now, we find out, it's going to air on Tuesday night, December 13th, right? That's the 13th, next Tuesday. Tuesday night, December 13th at 9 o'clock Eastern, and we'll talk about that in a second. But the point is, I was bringing this up to you as we spoke briefly before we came on the air. There has never been a full-fledged documentary, or even any documentary on the WWE network or anywhere else. There has not been a documentary on the life and crimes of Vince McMahon. There has not been a biography, or certainly not an autobiography. We've heard of all these projects that have been in the works now. They were going to do a Netflix series on Vince, and that, I believe, was canceled around about the time of the public exposure, so to speak, of the illegal paralegal. There's a guy named Abraham, help me with his last name again. Reisman, that is doing an unauthorized biography of a book on Vince, which, in full disclosure, I can't wait to read it, because there's still things about Vince's childhood and early formative years that I don't fucking understand or haven't been able to fully grasp my head around.
And that author, Abraham Reisman, previously did the Stan Lee biography.
Well, yeah, and in full disclosure, I got an email from him if I wanted to talk to him, and I didn't, because you know what? I can't psychoanalyze Vince McMahon any better than a lot of other people that have worked with him for even longer than I did, and I just want to read this fucking book. I don't want to be in it, whether I would have been or not. But there's a book that's still going to be coming out. The Netflix multi-part series apparently was canceled. There has been another project. Which one am I not thinking about? That there
was an oral history that was being done by, I believe, Craig Marks, who did the MTV one and other ones previously, and it was one where they had company cooperation to the point where he actually got to talk to Vince several times. That's also why the company was able to specifically request, don't speak to certain people. David Schultz was named number 1 on that list.
Yes, but that's an oral history of the WWF. I'm talking about specific. Oh, Vince, the movie where he was doing butt things with Linda and the fucking leaked script.
Oh yeah.
Right, that was another project. But so there's been all these projects about Vince being talked about, and the first one that comes to the air is being broadcast is the one on Vice TV next Tuesday that we talked about. And unless I've been watching Tales from the Territories, maybe not live, but I'll catch it a day or two later on DVR. I haven't been watching the reruns of Dark Side of the Ring, but I have not seen a commercial. I have not seen on all the wrestling sites. You think if Vice sent pwinsider.com, here's a 1-minute trailer on this Vince McMahon documentary we're going to put it. You think they wouldn't have disseminated that to the people? All I saw was an announcement a couple of days ago that it's going to air next Tuesday. This is the first ever documentary. I don't know what it's going to look like. And I'm not saying it's going to be good or bad or indifferent, as Mama Cornette used to say. I'm saying this is the first one. And I can't believe that they didn't have a strategic plan, especially with a series, Tales from the Territories, that's been on for the past 8 weeks, that they're putting it on in the Territories time slot, actually 9 to 11, because it's a 2-hour documentary, but they've had wrestling programming on Tuesday night for the past 2 months, and they didn't beat this up. And they didn't run a commercial in every Dark Side of the Ring repeat, because Dark Side, as Vice themselves said, was the highest rated program they've had on their station. And even the reruns, just the acreage, just the real estate that it takes up on their station that wouldn't cost them, I don't think, a fortune to run commercials for one of their programs on their own station. And I can't believe further that they didn't say, you know what, we've got something that nobody's done before and brought to market as of this point, and we know exactly where the target audience is, so we're not only going to do some kind of minor buy with every wrestling website just to get them on board with us, give them some attention and give them these publicity materials, but they couldn't go to the top 10, 15 markets in the country and do a local cable buy on Raw or a local station buy on the Fox station on SmackDown. And because I did, and it's hard dealing with local cable companies on doing specific targeted advertising when I want these 6 30-second spots in that particular 2-hour program, or I don't want them on your station at all. They don't work that way, and they don't get that, but you can if you find a salesman that's on the ball and knows what the fuck they're doing and can monitor things, wants to make a fucking commission or whatever. But in New York and Los Angeles and Chicago, when people are watching Raw, a commercial for that, a documentary on Vince McMahon after all of this year's publicity, Vice, I think, has flummoxed by not getting the word out in time and not targeting the word in the right place, a chance for them to do 1 million views of something on their station, which should be pretty attractive for them for something like that. What do you think, Brian?
I think it's Vice. I mean, I'm not surprised at all. They,
Oh, come on. I've elevated that network.
Yeah, hey, listen, Tales from the Territories.
I'm the Walter Cronkite of Vice. People, I'm the most trusted man in America.
You're certainly the most valuable person they have on their wrestling programs. I will give you that.
The nicest guy in prison is the tone that you just...
Well, look, Tales from the Territories has been a disappointment. Ratings-wise, they had The Rock behind it as production company. They did advertise the shit out of that. It was in the subways, all over the place. And the ratings have been significantly lower than Dark Side of the Ring.
Yes.
And it's been
and to be honest, and I think that it's great. We love those stories. I wish there were a few other people still around in some of the territories that could have told some of them. But it's sort of like the difference in what the modern wrestling fan, the AEW indie-rific kind of fan, we'll have a great match and that'll draw the viewers. And the 80s WWF fan, I don't give a shit whether the match is any good or not. I want to see stars. Well, the truth probably lies a little bit in the middle. But with Dark Side of the Ring, they had a name to hang their hat on, or they had an incident that people were intrigued by or interested in. And by the nature of Tales from the Territories, you can't really sell that on that aspect of a star or a tragedy or an incident, because they're all different tales.
You can if you know how to sell it. But again, and I'm not going to go into a whole dissertation on the failures of the promotion and everything with that show and the actual execution, but to go into what we're saying, Dark Side of the Ring is the most popular show in the history of the network.
Right.
Tales from the Territories, even with The Rock and all the publicity, nowhere near that. And it's still, all things considered, even with the shrinking cable universe, it's a small cable network. They don't have, are they going to budget a big promotional campaign? Even if it's just the wrestling sites, are they going to budget that for the Vince McMahon documentary?
Well, I'm not talking about spending $10 million and doing a Super Bowl ad.
But you're talking about a network that doesn't want to spend much. A lot of stuff. They're burying a Vince McMahon documentary just in the regular, normal wrestling time slot.
Okay, 6 weeks of lead promotion on their own station wouldn't cost them anything. So I'm not saying to spend a ton of money.
Maybe they're being run by Tony Khan. I can't explain why they do things like that.
Get the word out to make sure people know. Get the buzz. The people are buzzing.
Is that the big thing you're still most interested in, though? Vince McMahon's childhood? Out of everything with Vince, that's the thing you're most interested in?
Yes, because I've seen or heard in close proximity to or talked to people who were around at various other points in his life, but I still don't get. I want to see it in linear, documented fashion, because then, I mean, that's the way you know that he was formed. I know the major points and what led to all his picadillos, but I just have to see how all this took place.
It will be interesting. I'm one of the people who has pre-ordered the biography, I believe. But Jim, before we get going too much further, I want to ask you about a couple serious topics.
Now, how much new lead time do we get on the biography, the book? Is that going to be? Oh, it's on sale tomorrow. Oh shit! What? Or are they going to promote that son of a gun?
The Abraham Reisman Vince McMahon biography. I pre-ordered it in June, and it's due out in March.
Well, good.
In time for WrestleMania.
Buzzing about
in time for March 28th, 2023. Just in time for WrestleMania.
Oh, me.
The name of the book? Ringmaster, Vince McMahon and the Unmaking of America.
Wow.
That sounds interesting.
It's tantalizing.
There's another book here, but it only has 1 star. The Chronicle of Vince McMahon, The Retirement and Biography. It has 1-star review.
What?
Yeah, there's nothing.
Who wrote this? What?
Some guy. I don't want to malign him here because I don't know anything about this book, but 1 review, 1 star. But you're right. How many other big executives who have this long a run, and especially front and center right in front of the camera, there's no biographies. There's nothing good. You know, the Sex, Lies, and Headlocks comes up here, the Mike Mooneyham book, but that's a different animal altogether. And Lavie Margolin's book about...
That's not Vince's life from start to... Well, not finish. He's not done with it yet, but Vince's life from chronologically from start to today has not been done either on video or in written form.
Jim, before we go much further, as I said, let me ask you a couple serious topics. This is one I saw this morning, and it's a wrestler I'm not terribly familiar with, but I know you worked with him. An article in Sports Illustrated, or at least on SI.com, by Justin Barrasso. After his cancer diagnosis, MLW star Richard Holliday has one goal. And it says halfway through a course of chemotherapy to treat Hodgkin's lymphoma, his sole focus is on returning to the ring.
Oh, you know, I just got goosebumps when you said that because I just saw that on the internet yesterday. In 2019, I did some of the color commentary for MLW, Major League Wrestling, for our old friend Court Bauer. And Richard Holliday, along with MJF and Alexander Hammerstone, was a three-man heel group that they were calling they were the Dynasty, right? The rich kids, the Hammerstone was the, college jock and football hero type. And the other two were the snooty rich kids from the Hamptons and the whole, it's just, they were incredible. And obviously, Holliday's from New England, I believe. And Hammerstone has gotten a little attention because he is either currently the MLW champion or he and Jacob Fatu traded back and forth. He's been used as a top guy there. MJF, we know what he's been up to. And I hadn't really heard Richard Holliday's name over the last little while, year, whatever. And then I saw that he's already, as you said, halfway through chemotherapy for Hodgkin's lymphoma, which it's a form of cancer. I can't differentiate one from another.
Right.
But he's 30 years old. And so my mouth dropped open. And, first of all, I hope he's doing well and beats that thing. But, just to put it in perspective, honestly, if Tony had been smart enough or wanted to spend enough money or whatever the fuck it would have taken to get MJF and Hammerstone and Holliday all at the same time for AEW, that would have been his top heel group for still probably. They were fucking great together. They played off of it. They each had a distinct personality and each had a distinct way of speaking and each had a distinct way of working, but at the same time, they worked well together in, like I said, the clique of fucking snooty, modern day, suit wearing, sunglass fucking, they each had their own personality within that kind of group. And, and I loved getting a chance to produce some of the interview segments they did because it was just, observing what they would do and say with each other and kind of the way if they would rib or tell a joke or just whatever, and letting them do that with each other and then turning and getting to the point of the promo, whoever they were going to talk about. And it didn't look so phony, and they each came off as natural. They're laying out by the pool. Hammerstone's almost naked, and he's tanning because he's the fucking body guy. And MJF has, like, fucking Burberry shorts and a fucking scarf on with flip-flops, but Holliday's in a three-piece suit at the pool, but he's reading the fucking Wall Street Journal because he was the financial whatever. Or I walked in one time, and Hammerstone is doing push-ups to get a pump for, the promo, right? And I asked him a legitimate question because I was thinking of another idea. And I said, how many push-ups can you do? And he said, all of them. I said, perfect. I said, there's the intro to the fucking promo we're about to do. So he's doing fucking push-ups, and Holliday's reading the fucking Wall Street Journal, and MJF is there doing whatever, and MJF looks over and says, Hammerstone, how many push-ups can you do? And he says, all of them. And then they do that. It was just... So anyway, point is that was a money-drawing group, a three-man kind of team of individuals that at the same time you could put them in different combinations, you know, with mainstream television and some talent to work with, you could draw money with those guys. And Holliday's work just, he was the guy in the middle because Hammerstone was visually so big and MJF verbally is so fucking great. But Holliday's work and his talking was just as good as anybody else on the show, if not better. So anyway, so I just, you know, I hate to hear something like, and how the fuck does something like that even happen to a guy that's 30 years old that's an athlete, that you look at pictures of him, he's in shape. You know, it can happen to anybody.
That's the problem with cancer. It could happen to anyone at any time, and we certainly wish the very best for Richard Holliday. We hope he does get to come back, and also if he has an MLW contract, we hope he's released from it so we get to see him when he comes back. But no, you know, one of those guys out there, and you bring up Hammerstone too, when people say like, oh, but who's Tony supposed to have on his roster? There are two guys that would be better than a lot of the other people that are there right now.
Yeah.
But Jim,
and we've talked many times about Jacob Fatu, so there's no sense beating that dead Samoan werewolf.
Is there any value, real quick as an aside, do you think there's value to Jacob Fatu beyond his actual talents, just because of the relation to Roman Reigns and the bloodline?
Yes.
I mean, not if you're WWE, if you're AEW.
If you're anybody, it's written itself already. Here, see that guy walking down the street? He looks like somebody you don't want to fucking mess with. He's not that tall. He's my height. He's 6 feet tall. When I was watching him work, I think he's lost a little weight. Last time I saw a clip, he's a little lighter, but is he 250? Is he 270? I don't fucking know. But he not only fucking looks like somebody you don't want to fuck with when he's walking down the street, but then he gets in the ring and does far and away athletic things that you would look at his physique and his build and say, nah, this is a guy that can moonsault and not make it look fucking phony. He's not like Pac, where he has to fucking get up on a top rope and super glue his feet to the fucking turnbuckle for 30 seconds, get his balance. He flies at people. He fucking flips. And again, you know, people are going to say, oh, Cornette's talking about flips. Well, when any trampoline cowboy that weighs 175 pounds can do something, it's one thing. When it's a 260-pound Samoan and he's got better form and it comes out of nowhere, but he springs up. He does the moonsault. He's going over in midair. He's going to fucking land on this guy, knee first probably in his face, but he sees that instinctively. And he raised his knee up to the side and boom, and landed perfectly where he didn't hurt the guy. It looked like he killed him. Because when I recorded it on television, I watched it back in slow motion. And you could tell as soon as he was turning over backwards where he could see the guy, he just spread his leg out a little bit. And when I mentioned it to him afterwards, he didn't even know he'd done it. It was instinctive. But the point I'm making is this thing has written itself, but nobody will take advantage of it. Solo, for as good as he is, Solo is in the spot that Jacob Fatu should be in the WWE as the enforcer, the street fighter, because Solo looks clean. He's got a nice haircut. He's got clean gear. Fucking Jacob Fatu looks like a goddamn beast. And yeah, from meeting him and talking to him a few times, I get the feeling he's one of these guys. He probably grew up in a rough neighborhood around some rough people and have probably done some things that people that grow up in those places and know those people have done. But he's not like a goddamn axe murderer or criminal or a lunatic or whatever. But he sure comes off as one when he turns it on. And that's the thing. This guy emits animosity and aggression and danger, and the sense that he would go into business for himself, even though he's nobody. Because when you got Brock Lesnar, he can still give off the aura that he'll go into business for himself and fuck somebody up just on a whim because he's got fuck you money and he don't give a shit. Well, this guy's on the other end of the fucking spectrum. You can pretty much look at him and say, he ain't got shit that he really gives a fuck about losing, right? This fucking character, so fuck it. He don't care. That's the aura that you have to have danger with somebody like that. You have to have an aura of danger. So, you asked about AEW. Jesus, Mary and Joseph on a fucking zebra.
I didn't ask you about AEW for using him just for what he is. I said specifically about the fact that he's related to the top stars in WWE.
Well, yes, but here's the gimmick. Here's the gimmick for anybody. This is the black sheep of the fucking family, and look at the territory that takes in. When you talk about all the fucking Samoan wrestlers and the island boys, and whether it's the Anoa'i family or the fucking widen it out to the Barbarian and the fucking Haku and the legendary lineages and the Samoans and the Peter Maivia, this guy is too hot for all of them to touch. The black sheep of the family. Build up the danger about this fucking guy. He's been in jail. He's been in solitary. They wrapped him up in a goddamn straitjacket one time and put him in a rubber room at the Puzzle Factory when he cleared out a goddamn gang bar. Because the fucking performance that this guy puts on, if it was a serious presentation of somebody that don't give a fuck and has got nothing to lose and has been overlooked because he was the black sheep of the family and the others don't want a part of him. And he's got, and like I said, if I was ever going to come, which I ain't, manage anybody anymore at all, this is the fucking guy that you could take, or any great mouthpiece. And maybe Heyman might not even fit this, just because Heyman, besides the fact he's my age, I don't know that. I think it needs to be somebody different and somebody new, but that can talk and could get that point across and bring this guy out and say he will fuck you up, and he really will drink your blood and eat your bones. And just flesh that background out in that way. It's not hard to believe. There's elements in there of truth. If his, I don't want to say criminal record, but whatever he's got on his record that maybe people, haven't wanted to fucking splurge on him so far. But he's a natural fucking talent. And even more natural, I've seen most of the Samoans since the fucking Samoans. And this guy's more natural in the ring than most of them.
Well, Jim, I said that we had a couple serious topics. Let me ask you about one more. And it's
I was about to say, we started off on Richard Holliday and we got to Jacob Fatu, and by process of 6 degrees of separation or whatever. But also, again, we do wish Richard all the best, because at that age he can kick this thing out and still have a good career. And, so that's the most important thing.
Well, Jim, more sad news this week, and it is still a developing story, but as of this morning, I believe still, Barry Windham is in an ICU in a hospital in Florida, having various health ailments. A GoFundMe has been set up by his family, I believe by his niece. And of course, you were around Barry Windham during some of those great years when he was, if he wasn't the best wrestler in the business, he was in the conversation. So what are your thoughts about all this Barry Windham news?
Oh, I hated to hear that. It was just a couple of days ago. And apparently, the news story that I saw said he had had a heart attack like 10 years ago or somewhere in that time frame, and had gone through some type of, lengthy, recovery or rehabilitation or whatever off of that. And because I'm 61, he's 62. And, again, I'm like, it used to be, the people when they get old, now it's like, oh shit. But you were right. He was definitely at one point in time the best babyface in the business, without question. Was Flair still the best heel, and then pick it from there? And and there was another couple of people in the talk, but not many. But he's just so good. And that's the thing. He grew up around the business because he was obviously the son of Blackjack Mulligan. But he was another guy who was so natural, you couldn't teach that. And most people that grew up around the business, even knowing how to look at it and with a critical eye from being a teenager, and they still couldn't do that type of thing with their bodies. The coordination and the smoothness that he had. And for a guy that size, was he 6'6" or 6'7", thereabouts, 260, 270. He was, a thin, lithe, as they say. He wasn't a bodybuilder, but he was in great shape. Cardio, he could go all night. I never saw him to the point where, he was blown up and looking for any kind of rest, even with fucking Flair. But just the coordination and just the natural ability he had to take the bump that you wouldn't think, again, a guy with that kind of size and that kind of body, would take, or the over the top rope bump where he never even grabbed anything. He would just able to get drop kicked and turn. And because he was so tall, the top rope was at his waist, and he would just bend over forward and go over the top rope and roll off the rolling bumps that were, he didn't need to touch anything. He just used his body to turn himself in the air. It was cool to watch. And it looked at the same time like he was completely out of control. But, painfully thin when he first got into business. And that's the problem Kendall had also, his brother, was that if everybody remembers Blackjack, he had already played in the NFL and, Bob Windham, and was fucking huge, 300 and something pounds when he first started in business. His sons were thinner, but then the problem becomes, I think, the genes take over. And the last time I saw Kendall was at one of the Charlotte Fan Fests, I think like 6 or 7 years ago. And he was the size Barry, remember how thin Kendall was? He was the size that Barry used to be in the old days, like 275 pounds. And Barry had to be, 325 or 30 or 40 or whatever the fuck it was. So I think that, the Windham genes, caught up with them when they stopped being more physically active. But yeah, Barry, the best trilogy, everybody talks about Flair and Steamboat in 89, but Flair and Windham in 80, what was it, 6 and 7? They started the Battle of the Belts in Tampa, the Crockett Cup in Baltimore, and what was the other? Or the Battle of the Belts was St. Pete.
Battle of the Belts was 86. Obviously, Crockett Cup was 87.
The Crockett Cup was 87. There was one more really. Oh, the Worldwide.
The Worldwide match. I went the whole show.
Yeah. I mean, those were in their own way as good as Flair and Steamboat. And in some ways they were, even better, because I think that's the one thing a lot of guys in the business at the time with Steamboat, you say his selling was pretty and his moves were pretty because he was so smooth and some of the guys like Ole would knock ass pretty. But it was a different way of communicating pain, but Barry's fights were grittier. And so in some cases, I think that, BW and Rick overachieved their Flair and Steamboat's trilogy. But anyway, I mean, I've told this story before also, but because when he'd get in the ring with Bobby Eaton, then, when we would work a program with Barry and Ronnie Garvin during that time, they were a tag team in 87 also. At the same time he's having all these great matches, a lot of his regular run was with Ronnie against the Midnight for the U.S. Tag Team title, and then he's doing other shit, and then by the next year he switched heel. I mean, he was figured in all the time. Dusty loved him because of that kind of work. Who wouldn't? But when he'd get in the ring with Bobby Eaton on spot shows, they would amuse themselves because they were both so good and so natural and so effortless that they would just fuck around and nobody would know. They would have matches on their knees. Somewhere or another, fucking Bobby would end up on his knees begging, and Barry would grab his arm, and Barry'd go down to a knee and arm drag Bobby off his knees. And then, goddamn, they'd start doing a thing where Bobby would hit the ropes out of a headlock on his knees, but he'd hit the second rope and come back, and fucking Barry would pick him up for a scoop slam while Barry was on his knees. And they would have matches like giving each other a handicap to make it a little more difficult. The people wouldn't know the fucking difference. It all looked natural, like they were jockeying for position somehow. And neither one had time to get off their fucking knees. It's a goddamn thing I've ever seen. I wish they'd actually videotaped any of the house shows back in those days. We were doing this in fucking Covington, Virginia. But again, that's why I think Barry, by the late 90s, and they tried that fucking stalker thing at that one point where Vince tried to make it, because he found out Barry liked to hunt down in the woods in Florida or whatever. So suddenly he was a face painted, I don't know what, the son of Skinner, and jacking around with different gimmicks and everything. The WWF crowd never really got a chance to see Barry, but by that point also he'd been in the business. He started in 79 or 80, because Flair and Blackjack had bought Knoxville, and Barry started as Blackjack Mulligan Jr., and he was about 3 inches around, but he was only 19 at that point. So, he by the time that the WWF run, couple of them happened in the 90s, he'd been in the business almost 20 years. He had hurt knees several times, and I think it just after the early 90s lost a lot of his motivation.
Around the same time his knees went out.
Yeah. And when you have knee problems, and then he was in the middle of the WCW Turner Broadcasting era, and nobody was happy anywhere. And I think it wasn't the last major run he had down there. Wasn't he part of they made the West Texas Rednecks, right? Him and like Duncombe Jr. and some of the other guys that did the rap is crap thing and ended up getting over his heels because everybody was sick of the rappers.
Him, Duncan Jr., Kendall, and Kurt Hennig.
Yeah. And that was probably worth the price of admission, riding in a car with those guys just for Barry and fucking Kurt.
There are so many what ifs around Barry, like at different points in his career. What if he had stayed with Dusty in 84? What if he had not left Vince McMahon in 85? What if, it's one after another. What if he had not quit at the beginning of 89?
Yeah.
To do nothing over there, because again, that's the period of time where his dad and his brother got into trouble, and that may have played a part in that. There's so many what ifs for a guy who was one of the most talented guys for at least half of the 80s. You have to say he was top tier.
Well, and that's the thing, though, he inherited from Blackjack, that the Windhams would give notice and leave, or just leave possibly sometimes without giving notice if they wanted to. And sometimes it was like, Jesus Christ, he just got here. And because he left, Dusty was going to, always have BW as his right-hand man. But then he left to go to New York just long enough for Dusty to get Magnum. But then he left New York and kept, okay, well, that's the same. Magnum had just had his accident. So now we got BW back. But that didn't last. And then Dusty was gone, and then blah, blah, blah. And he would go back and forth on, I won't say a whim, but it didn't seem like there was a lot of thought put into it when all the other territories had gone away and you were, working on your third resignation from each of the ones that were left. But nevertheless, I saw a report that they may have done some type of surgery. I don't know if that's like a bypass or opening up a, blockage or whatever they do. But yeah, geez, I certainly hope he gets, whatever treatment and gets better. But, I guess, didn't Blackjack have heart issues also? Maybe it's a genetic thing and you got to watch that. Yeah, I know. I keep an eye on mine all the time. I have to get in front of one of those Grinch things to magnify it so I can see it. But so anyway, we certainly hope everything works out. And then they do have the GoFundMe page on the GoFundMe thing. And I think some of, because, the Windham family in some way or another touched a lot of different people in the business. And, a lot of people looked up to either Barry's dad or Barry's generation or whatever, and now Bray Wyatt. So anyway, hopefully everything works out.
Hopefully someone can point Bray Wyatt in the direction of that GoFundMe for his uncle. But Jim,
it would seem like that he could probably chip in at this point with his recent success.
Jim, let's end this segment on a little bit of an upbeat note. You growing up so close to Cincinnati, today's the 75th birthday, as we are recording, of Johnny Bench, Cincinnati Reds catcher. Was he a big deal when you were a kid?
I was never a baseball fan. But having said that, in the days of the Pete Rose, Johnny Bench era, even on our local television, local news, you couldn't get away from Cincinnati Reds. And also Aunt Lola lived up in Covington, right across the river from Cincinnati. So every time I would go up there and see their news, I mean, those names, that was the biggest thing in Cincinnati. And at the time, Louisville didn't have any professional sports except wrestling. So, the Cincinnati Reds, in effect, were our baseball team, because that was the closest one to it. It's 90 miles, as the crow flies, or as the pop-up flies. But yes, Johnny Bench was a big deal. And Pete Rose especially was, because Pete Rose was an even bigger star back in those days on the team than Johnny Bench was. But you heard all of those names regularly. And what was the old woman that owned the team?
Marge Schott.
Marge Schott. She was mentioned quite often, as I remember it.
The Kanye West of the 90s.
The last few years of mentions of her weren't kindly, and she was like this surly old woman that you could just see fucking smoking a cigar and fucking hanging around with Mae Young.
A racist anti-Semitic who would have a dog named Shotzi that she would force players to kiss.
Shotzi. Yes, I remember. She's always holding Shotzi in her arm. Yes.
Well, perhaps you're a big fan of the Cincinnati Reds and you'd like to see pictures of the Big Red Machine, Johnny Bench, Pete Rose, Joe Morgan, George Foster, all the rest. Or perhaps you're a fan of racist dogs like Shotzi. Whatever it is, we know where you can house these pictures in a fun way that the whole family can enjoy, and that's with our friends at Skylight Frame.
We know where you can put those pictures. I'll tell you what. By the way, the Big Red Machine was what they called the Cincinnati Reds, and the Big Red Machine Kane gave Pete Rose a tombstone. See how these weird, wild, wacky, wonderful things happen in this world, and you always want to remember them. And that's why you take pictures, and you put pictures up in your house, and you look at the pictures to remember the thing that you did when you took the picture of it. And that's the way you can do it now with space-age modern technology, folks, and our friends at Skylight Frames. What have we said about this thing? It's an old favorite of many of the listeners, and they're back because it's a holiday season. Perfect time to remember your family or to put pictures up of people that you want to be on the lookout for. If you see this person, call the authorities. Whatever you want to use this thing for, the Skylight Frame is a beautiful picture frame, not just for one frame, ladies and gentlemen, or not one picture, but for many pictures, because it's the modern technology. It's connected to the wireless network, and you can email an app to people for this thing. and all you people know how to use the apps and the emails. It's a black and white, or black frame, a white mat, matches anything. Black and white goes with anything. Just look at the piano. And you've got 2 size options to choose from, either the original big 10-inch or the brand new extra large 15-inch. That's if you want to have pictures larger than 10 inches, they'll fit in the 15-inch. And you know why they'll fit? Because you'll be able to load them there.
Well,
you just, what?
The pictures will fit in either frame. They're digital pictures. It's a wonderful digital frame.
Yeah, but they'll fit better in the 15-inch because they'll be bigger.
Well, no, they'll fit perfectly in both, not better in one or the other.
Well, bigger's always better. Haven't you heard that? Size matters. If I were you people, I'd get the big 15-inch one instead of the original 10-inch. That's just me. But nevertheless,
it's how you use it.
It's how you use it. It's where you hang it. And if you're hung right, everything else falls into place. So, what you do is you take this, now Matthew, I'm trying to tell you, you take this frame and you load pictures on it. You get on the wireless network, you connect to the app, and you email pictures to this skylight frame and they pop up in seconds. And you can do the slideshow where just picture after picture goes by. So it's sort of like identifying mug shots in the police station. You just flip through it until you've seen every criminal that you know.
It's like seeing pictures of your family. You shouldn't really necessarily associate this with criminals.
Hey, who are you to call these people's family criminals?
I'm not. I'm saying they're not criminals. You're saying they're criminals.
Well, you said they were your family.
Who would put pictures of criminals in their house?
Detectives.
They would put pictures of criminals in their house so they're constantly reminded of them?
Practice.
Practice what?
Practice detecting. Anyway, and the other people can do this also, not strangers at random, although that would be cool. You know what? Go and write down your code and your app on a bathroom wall and say, send me pictures, and see what you get.
Bad idea.
I bet it'd be entertaining.
Don't do that.
Don't do that? All right, don't do that. Just kids.
You can do that, but everyone else don't do that.
Kids, go ahead and do that without asking your parents' permission. But anyway, and other people can send them as well. Like I said, if you want to say, hey, Grandma Susie, you need to send a picture of you back in the old days on the beach in a string bikini to little Oshkosh over here. He's never seen you before. Whatever the case may be, family members can contribute to this thing, whoever's got possession of it. You can send pictures willy-nilly to it's amazing. It's absolutely amazing. Technology in action. And the kids will love it. It moves and lights up and, does the whole thing. There's movement and light. So all the cats will love it. The dogs will love it. The kids will love it. Your husband might get sick of it after a while, but nevertheless, pictures of loved ones on the skylight frame. And right now, if you go to Skylight, that's SKYLIGHT, skylightframe.com, and enter the code DRIVE, DRIVE, you're going to get $15 off your purchase of a skylight frame. $15 off one of these things. They're practically giving it away. Skylightframe.com, promo code DRIVE. For $15 off the purchase of a skylight frame to make everybody in the family and your friends happy. Give some to your neighbors. Give one to your neighbor and put a nice picture of your family, and they'll stick it on the shelf. And then if your neighbor ever pisses you off, is a bad neighbor, doesn't keep their yard up, blows their leaves over on yours, then you can send a picture of your dick and just say, fuck you to your neighbor.
There's no need for any of that, but give it to people you care about, people you love, and of course, get one for yourself, skylight frame.
Or a picture of your ass. If you bend over, pull your pants down and write kiss on one cheek and my on the other cheek, take a picture of it and send it to your neighbor's skylight frame.
All right, well, obviously we don't encourage that. But get Skylight Frame, and Jim, let's move on with the show to the things we do encourage, which are questions about wrestling.
All righty.
I wanted to ask you one I thought about the other day, because I was reading some comments on one of the videos, and I saw something, and thought it was a really interesting point, and I really started thinking about it. Jim, when you look at AEW, and you look at all the problems they're currently having, there have been long-term problems that were ignored by a lot of people. Then now all of a sudden they're recognizing it. It's a little weird when the people who thought Tony was a good booker are now all of a sudden saying, well, maybe not so much, but the show's not radically different than it was other than when CM Punk was doing things. When you look at all the AEW problems this year, was Vince McMahon retiring/resigning the worst thing that happened to AEW?
You know what? Yes. In short version, I think it may have been because, I mean, go back 3 years or 4 years now, if it's been, or whatever, to the first, the first All In, right? Before there was an AEW. And everybody was amazed, and they attributed this, quick sellout and huge gate and blah, blah, blah to the appeal and the notoriety and the drawing power and etc. of the elite, right? That's, oh my God, these guys. And then everybody started making offers and etc. etc. What did I say at the time? I said go ahead.
I was going to say what I remember you saying was this is the biggest crowdfunding.
This is the biggest crowdfunding event in wrestling history. The idea and the appeal was that the really hardcore fans, the amount or number, give or take, that watch AEW television now, that most dedicated and vociferous group, they are pissed off because their favorites have been maligned and mistreated by the evil empire. I've been saying all along that the fucking Mr. McMahon was the greatest heel in wrestling, and since then that they haven't been able to get off the heel authority figure, that turned the company heel in 25 years. And that group of fans wanted to see, that's why they were indie fans, because they like the indies, because it's not Vincey. They wanted to see their favorite wrestlers that had either been held down by the evil empire of the WWE or had never been given a chance, or the darlings that they saw on the entertainment indies that they were watching instead of the WWE. But there was a massive backlash amongst that group over the idea that Vince McMahon had a monopoly on wrestling. And they smoked the hopium, and they wished, and they prayed, and they clutched their pearls, and they dreamed of the day that they could support somebody that was going to put Vince McMahon in his place. And then along came Tony Khan to do that. And boy, howdy. Well, then, and the sports-based presentation, and we're going to be wrestler friendly and fan friendly, and all the buzzwords, and the idea that the elite were now going to be the EVPs because they're the start of this revolution. They weren't the start of the revolution. They were the guys that were in the middle of it when they put together the crowdfund. That's the genius idea. Vince McMahon has so much heat that we will create a promotion solely owned and operated or manipulated or whatever by the wrestlers that aren't going to, and so that way the wrestlers won't get fucked around. That was the concept of it. And they took their built-in audience and applied it to that. And I said that also. I said, now what happens as this thing became a reality when the counterculture becomes the man? When it's not the wrestlers, getting all the money and doing it for themselves, and all those people that bought a ticket to see Chicago knew it was going right into Cody's pocket and into the Buck's pocket and Twinkle Toes' pocket, whatever. Now there's a billionaire involved, but Tony was markish enough in his appearance to appeal to that same fan base where they were going to give him a chance because they were smoking the hopium and they didn't want to hear anything different. And that still was mostly the case until at the same time that instead of the 7-year itch, he started getting the 3-year cracks, because that's how long it took for all this festering in AEW's locker room and cliques and different divisions and thoughts on what the business ought to be and no leadership, blah, 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 started festering, combined with all of a sudden Vince catches on fire in public. I mean, anybody that was mad at Vince, the heat is off of him now, because he was taken down, exposed as a prevert, and run off. And now the friendly wrestler, son-in-law, that championed all of this same kind of audience's favorite wrestlers, up to and including Johnny fucking Gargano.
And whose placement as an EVP is the only reason these guys wanted to be EVPs in AEW.
Exactly, to counteract that. Now, the fans that were livid over the idea that Vince McMahon was going to be doing all this to their favor, they ain't mad at Vince anymore because he's gone. And now they kind of remember, well, yeah, but he did kind of bring us all that great stuff. And at the same time, they're not mad at Triple H because he hadn't fucked anybody around. He's trying to bring most of them back that got fucked around. And having considerable success, William Regal. By the way, hold on one second. Another in Brian Last's category. William Regal will be starting soon. So that's what's happened. The heat is off the entity that created the backlash that caused a core group of people to want to see another promotion of any kind happen. And the promotion of any kind that happened as a result of that backlash is falling apart because people didn't objectively look and say, oh, this guy's never done any of this before, so why should we think he can't? And there you go. So, yeah, Vince leaving is the worst thing to happen to AEW this year. That's because, honestly, I mean, the cracks were going to be exposed, and the ill will and bad feeling amongst people behind the scenes and blah, blah, blah. And as you mentioned, when the first EVP would leave, it would be Cody, and it was. But at least they still had, it's like the fucking Republicans. They still, well, we may be running ahead of Broccoli, but it could be worse. It could be a Democrat in that seat. So AEW always said, well, they could go and work for Vince McMahon and get turned into Max Dupree or whatever the fuck. But now some of the wrestlers that same group of fans likes is going to be featured again by the benevolent son-in-law, and the Empire ain't so evil anymore. And a lot of the wrestlers that didn't want to trust their careers to Vince McMahon in whatever state of mind he had gotten in at this point in his life, they sure don't mind letting Triple H give him a shot, especially if he's already expressed that he likes them to begin with. But they feel more confident or safer if they have any confidence in their own abilities. They would be more confident that Triple H would see that. So, yeah, Vince leaving did not do Tony Khan any favors this year when he's got all of his other shit going on.
Looking back now, knowing where we are and everything that's happened, how big of a mistake was it about a year ago when Tony Khan didn't pick up Cody Rhodes' option?
Ooh. Well, but you can't say that was a mistake, because if Cody had wanted that option picked up, that option would have got picked up. One way or another, it would.
Don't necessarily assume that.
Here's the thing. If Cody wanted to stay, he would have said, sure, Tony, how can I help you pick up my option? Can I bend over and get it from this side? It's only if Cody wanted to leave to begin with that he made it hard enough that Tony decided not to pick up that option.
Well, again, going back.
Either that or someone else was telling Tony, oh, God, don't bend over to pick up that option. That option's way too heavy for you.
Or Cody and Brandy had become, in Tony's eyes at that point, too big of a pain in the ass. And again, we didn't know how things were going to play out. But again, taking all that out of the equation, whatever Cody wanted or didn't want, Tony had the option. So going back to that question, how big of a mistake is it now, if you think it is, that he didn't pick up that option? Because he could have forced the hand.
Yeah, but then it wasn't working anyway. Because remember, Cody was about as popular as Crotch Rot there at the end with that audience. And I know they were going to play with it in some respect. Had he have stayed, they'd have done something. But if he hadn't got hurt, he walked right into the perfect spot in the WWE when they most needed him, and he was overperforming in that. Then he got hurt, so whether it was a mistake or not, by the time Cody gets back in the ring up there, he would have been free contractually anyway, and hopefully he'll step right into the same spot because, my God, why wouldn't he? Because they're so drastically short of talent that it wouldn't matter. The same thing's going to happen anyway. So I think it was probably... At least Tony got Cody out of there because there's another couple of people that didn't want to interact with some other people, and at least he got that situation out of his locker room.
Well, we'll see what happens with AEW going forward, but Jim, let's get some more questions here on the show. And several people have been asking about your thoughts about a few different programs, one from AEW and one from WWE. I'll start with AEW. AEW Rampage on Friday night this past week drew their lowest ratings in show history. I believe it was 361,000 viewers on TNT. We've been kind of talking about this for a while, but the fact that the audience is now still declining, they're doing nothing to make anyone want to see that show. Does that show existing there help or hurt AEW?
I think it's embarrassing at this point, and I think it hurts them with the network. Because here's a show that wasn't even part of the deal originally, and they got it because they had to switch the network because of the hockey, blah, 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 chased the cat that ate the rat. You know that story. But the point is they gave, okay, here's this show, right? And also the Battle of the Belts, for fuck's sake. They gave them extra programming, and they put stuff in those time slots that has literally lost between 50 and 75% of the audience. The last time they did a Battle of the Belts, I think it was it roughly or maybe more half of the audience of the first one. And Rampage, as we know, started with the return of CM Punk at 1.2 million. They just did 300,000. That's 75% of the audience they started with. And, of course, it was an artificially inflated start. But, my God, how can you explain when it became a regular show, it was still doing 500 or 600, and then it became 5 and 4 and now 3. Nobody gives a shit because it's dreck. The shows are rotten. And it doesn't have to be that way. There are people on that roster. When we did the roster, hold on here. Where is my goddamn roster? We came up with is there 26 lines on a piece of notebook paper? We came up with 30 names here that I would keep off that roster. How often do you see FTR work on Dynamite? Never. It's a joke. We know why. Because of the Buckaroos.
Oh, by the way, I want to answer a question you asked the other day. We were talking about the fact that you never see FTR on Dynamite. You only see Dax wrestle solo matches, which he loses. And you said, has he ever won one? He did. He won one singles match on Dynamite against Cash Wheeler.
That's right. The only person he could beat was his partner. We don't see Jay Lethal wrestle a lot. The Guns. Give them some experience. Claudio, Hobbs. What happened to Hook? There are guys that you could put into programs from week to week. doing interviews and having matches with disputed decisions and might lead to a rematch on that Friday night show, and at least try to develop a viewership for it. And then, VTR some things back on Wednesday nights so that the bigger audience, just barely, knows that it's not just a collection of bullshit title matches with every belt that Tony can collect with nobodies that we don't give a fuck about seeing and ain't going to see anymore, and just cold matches that are promoted 2 days ahead of time with a graphic on Dynamite. Program the thing like a wrestling show of the old days, where from week to week things happen between people that make logical, chronological sense. And try that. But regardless, it can't look good for AEW. I'm not even talking about the publicity on the websites where the fans read that the ratings are down. I'm talking about with the network, where they have given this company an hour of time, still in prime time, still between 8 and 11 o'clock, and they can't get 300-something thousand people. That's down below. There were episodes of Dark Side of the Ring on Vice TV that drew more than Rampage did last Friday on the TNT network. Bueller! That can't look good. And the viewer attrition can't look good. That all these shows, and I'm not even excluding or talking exclusively about AEW now, the viewer attrition the other night from Raw can't look good for their network. But not only the fact that fewer people are watching these programs, but that more people are tuning them out. And I mean, I never thought I'd see the day that a wrestling program wouldn't outperform its lead-in, but boy, howdy, here we are from every company. So, no, I think it's embarrassing. Either do something with that hour that you've been given, make a legitimate attempt at it. Give that to somebody else. If somebody on your goddamn, hold on here, the coaches that they've publicly said that Christopher Daniels, Dustin Rhodes, Frankie Kazarian, The Big Show, Sanjay Dutt, and William Regal were coaches. Well,
and there's others they've named actually since that time.
Well, yeah, but how about this? Give goddamn Dustin Rhodes Friday Night Rampage. Book this thing with all the good workers that can talk and have serious matches, and it just see what happens after 8 weeks. It can't get any worse.
They should make it a studio show. Give it a completely different feel and a different look than Dynamite. Don't tape it right after Dynamite. Tape it at a different time on a different day and give it a different kind of feel so someone flipping through the channels will go, what is this? And give it a chance. Because it feels like just another show. And that's before you get to the matches no one cares about.
And again, Dustin Rhodes would probably be able to figure out which guys can actually work. I'm not talking about giving people practice on national TV. I'm not talking about using the students. I'm talking about who on this fucking roster can work and can talk. Who are actual serious professional wrestlers. Give me some Samoa Joes, maybe some Swerve. What the fuck is Miro doing since he became a beast? We haven't seen him again. Give me some Jay Lethal. Give me the Gun Boys to be an annoying heel tag team. And, I was good. Kyle O'Reilly, who knows if he'll ever wrestle again. We haven't seen him in ages, or Adam Cole, whatever the fuck. But guys that can fucking wrestle. Powerhouse Hobbs. He looks like he's ready to go now, even though he needs experience. And just pick your 14 or 16 guys like a territory and book it like a territory. And maybe nothing else exists outside AEW Rampage. And I wonder if they'd actually start picking up viewers. If you saw the same 16 guys every week doing something that made some fucking sense, having some decent matches and talking like they were serious, and goddamn do a few DQs and a couple of disputed finishes that leads to goddamn rematches. And over 8 weeks, just see if you could pick anybody else up. Anyway, it can't get any worse. At what point does the network cancel when you don't have 300,000 people barely watching on one of the TBS networks? At what point do they say, well, we're idiots?
Well, we will find out. But Jim, another question on the topic of ratings. As we said, a lot of listeners have been sending in questions. This past week, Monday Night Raw, the overall show did 1.54 million viewers. The hourly breakdown was hour 1, 1.75 million was the average. Hour 2, 1.6. And hour 3, 1.26 million viewers, which is the lowest third hour in the history of the program. Or I guess, is it the lowest hour or third hour?
I think it's the lowest hour.
Lowest hour in the history of the program.
Yes. Remember I said 1.2 when AEW got 1.2 million. I was like, well, this is how far we've fallen. That you can, a national wrestling program gets 1 million. And now Raw has done it. And what was the main event there? What was the big thing that was going to hold the people all the way through the 3 hours of that somnambulism festival?
I'm not sure because I didn't watch it. Let me get the results right here. Here are the results.
Find the results because
Jim, here are the results for Raw this past week. The Usos wrestled Matt Riddle and Kevin Owens for the Tag Team Championship. Also, Asuka wrestled...
By the way, the Usos you see on television every week. Every week. FTR you see on television not at all. Just the difference in the two companies.
Pro Wrestling Illustrated magazine actually just named, I think, their 100 best tag teams of the year. You know, like they do the PWI 500, now they do one for tag teams. They named the Usos over FTR, and that was part of the argument. FTR are unquestionably fantastic, but the way they're used matters. So for that reason, the Usos, who have good matches and have been involved with a main event program for at least a year, if not a couple of years now, that alone propels them above FTR in the eyes of PWI.
And also, I heard the Briscoes came in number 3, and Jay said, imagine if they'd let us on television. The third best tag team in the business is not even on TV. Anyway, the results from Raw.
Back to this. Asuka wrestled Rhea Ripley, the winner being Bayley. Also on the show, Austin Theory lost via disqualification to Mustafa Ali. Also on the show, the OC defeated Alpha Academy and Baron Corbin.
Don't they have that match every fucking week also?
And those are the only matches I've resolved. Those may be the only... How many matches were on this fucking show?
Here's the thing. Somebody's going to say, well, Cornette, you said they ought to take on Friday night, they ought to take 16 guys and do the same shit with the same guys every week. Yeah, on a 1-hour program, not a 3-hour program.
Found a couple more matches. Dominic Mysterio defeated Akira Tozawa. And finally, I believe this would be the main event, Alexa Bliss defeated Nikki Cross and Becky Lynch.
Oh, boy. So,
in an era where everyone thinks they're a star, there are very little actual stars.
And I will say Becky Lynch is one, but I will say Nikki Cross would have so little star power that she would cancel Becky Lynch out. It's like putting Mick Jagger on stage with Howie the mailroom guy. The second half of that double bill tends to fucking temper expectations. But I don't even know where you would Google this information, and I could dive into my goddamn file drawers, but I didn't know this was going to come up. But am I again mistaken? Am I somehow misremembering my Pepperidge Farm in the glory days of Raw on the USA Network back in the late 90s? it wasn't a 3-hour program, it was a 2-hour program, but was there ever a period of time where the second hour did fewer viewers, or was it, didn't we always used to go up? I'm even questioning myself, but it seems to me that I remember the old Clash of Champions, it was a 2.5-hour program, and it peaked in viewers during the main event. I remember.
Well, it used to be a 3-hour show. Now it's a 3-hour tour.
Well, that's true. But no, in all honesty, as you picked up viewers as you went along. And during the Attitude Era where the Monday Night Wars, where they would switch back and forth, yes, there was ridiculous artificial fluctuation, but still within the context of start to finish, the main events on the program, the big happening at the end, the whatever, the shows generally grew instead of shrank. This is a sign that the people are willing to give the program a chance, but they just zone out because it's so long or so bland in the case of the WWE, or so just incomprehensible in case of the AEW shows, to where if you don't know that, if you don't have a destination person to watch in AEW, and once you see advertised what they're going to give you and kind of evaluate that, you're like, hey, I don't see how this is any good for either side. When it gets to the point where more people are listening to our podcast than watching a fucking primetime program on TBS, one of the TBS networks, I think they ought to be upset. And I think when it comes time that there's barely more people watching an hour of Raw on the USA Network that's been there for 30 fucking years than actually watches the big hotshot AEW programs, then I think they got to think, holy shit, we need to get some fucking stars.
Wrestling talk doesn't disappoint the way wrestling does. So wrestling talk will continue to rise, and shows like this will continue to see our numbers go up while wrestling goes down. It's just the way it's going to work going forward. But Jim, you brought up something before, and it made me want to look this up because I'm not sure if you realized it. This weekend is the Ring of Honor Final Battle pay-per-view. I have the card. I have the card here, and I'm hoping we don't have to watch it.
Well, let's evaluate that and see whether or not that they're going to entice us by the star power and the intrigue that they put into this card. That because I forgot that I lost a week when I was sick. You've heard of the lost weekend? I'm not Ray Milland. I'm Jim Cornette. I lose a whole fucking week.
Now, Final Battle used to be in New York traditionally, correct?
Yes, at the Hammerstein Ballroom, or occasionally down in the Grand Ballroom, but the big ones were at the Hammerstein, and that was the WrestleMania of Ring of Honor. That was established, I think, early on. As far as I can tell, it was already an established thing when I got there, that's the end of Ring of Honor's year, and they try to have the biggest match or the biggest event, and that was the first one to become an internet pay-per-view. And that whole sordid saga.
Well, this will be the latest one to become an internet pay-per-view.
Ugh. Hopefully they're not on Go Fight Live.
For $39.99, what do you think of the price point?
Okay, well, it was a lot cheaper on Go Fight Live, but you got what you paid for. But before they had the FTR and Briscoes match, which sold the pay-per-view. That we pretty much established that. People knew they weren't going to get it in an AEW event, so they got it on the Ring of Honor pay-per-view, and it delivered, and everybody was happy with it. And most of the people, I remember we said this, we bought the show to see that match, and we weren't disappointed because we intended to do that. And a lot of other people felt the same way. What have they got now coming 3 weeks after an AEW pay-per-view, a couple weeks after the Survivor Series, with Christmas coming up? What have they got to take the place of FTR versus Briscoes as we got to buy this show?
Well, tell me if any of these matches appeal to you. Once again, Ring of Honor Final Battle, 4 p.m. on Saturday, December 10th, $39.99.
4 o'clock on a Saturday afternoon?
Emanating from the College Park Center in Arlington, Texas. So not New York, Texas. 4 p.m. Saturday afternoon.
Why? We used to do Sunday afternoon pay-per-views at a variety of companies, but why Saturday afternoon? That's odd, isn't it?
I don't know what else is programmed on pay-per-view that night, so I can't really say anything. But here's the card listed as of this moment, days before the pay-per-view. Swerve in Our Glory, the team comprised of Keith Lee and Swerve Strickland, will take on Shane Taylor and J.D. Griffey for the Pure Championship.
Wait. Hold it, pump the brakes. Pump the fucking brakes. I've heard the name Shane Taylor. I am not well-versed enough in his career to say yay or nay to him, but who in the French fried titty fuck is J.D. Griffey?
Member of the Big Red Machine. That was Ken Griffey. I don't know who...
Has that name been mentioned on television? Have we heard that name mentioned on an AEW program anywhere? But I know this is a Ring of Honor, but since it's kind of AEW, but who the fuck is J.D. Griffey? Who is a wrestler named J.D. Griffey? If he's great, I apologize. But all right.
For the Ring of Honor Pure Championship, the champion, Daniel Garcia,
oh boy,
versus Wheeler Yuta.
Oh, seriously. You got to be ribbing me. Now, wait a minute. Aren't they both members of the formerly known as the Blackpool Combat Club, and now I guess they're going to move to fucking Cincinnati because Regal's gone, but aren't they teammates?
No, Garcia's in the Jericho Appreciation Society.
That's right, because he became a sports entertainer and turned on... That's right. Daniel Garcia versus Wheeler Yuta on pay-per-view.
Well, Tony's real high on that match, I understand, but also on the
Tony's
card,
real high.
On that match, I wasn't saying anything else. For the Ring of Honor Women's World Championship,
oh boy,
the champion, Mercedes Martinez, versus Athena.
Oh my God. You know, Mercedes has been around for a while, and I believe can probably handle herself. She seems like she's a little salty, a little peppery. So maybe they put her in there to say, if Athena tries to land on you with that big wide satchel ass and crush your face like she does to all the others, stretch her. That's be the only reason we'd want to see that match, is to see if it gets out of hand and Mercedes stretches Athena. But otherwise, have you seen now where Athena says, well, they just talking that way about my work because if we were men doing that.
I have the quote. Yeah, I'll ask you about that in a little bit.
Okay, but because I want to make sure that we hear that tomfoolery. But yeah, well, that's a pay-per-view match right there. Mercedes and Athena.
For the Ring of Honor World Television Championship, the champion Samoa Joe versus Juice Robinson.
What? Wait a minute. Samoa Joe is in an angle with Hobbs and Wardlow, right?
Well, only for the AEW TV title, the TNT Championship, not for the Ring of Honor TV title.
Well, but why would they shoot an angle on free TV where Joe and Hobbs and Wardlow are all sideways with each other and then put Joe on pay-per-view in a cold match with somebody that doesn't even fuck it? Does he work there full time, or is he another one of these guys that just bops in from New Japan?
I believe Juice Robinson is now signed, so it may be a title change.
Oh, well, good. Well, no, that if he just signed with AEW full time, then they'll bring him in and beat him. That's the formula they use. So, okay. All right. Well, pardon me for, I love me some Samoa Joe. I don't know if that's $40 worth I'm going to watch against Orange Juice Jones or whatever.
And finally, the main event.
Finally,
the main event of Final Battle Once again, a $40 pay-per-view event on Saturday afternoon for the Ring of Honor World Championship. The champion, the Ocho, Chris Jericho, versus Claudio Castagnoli, and I believe we'll be seeing a title change here.
Oh, well, now I know why it's on Saturday afternoon at 4 o'clock. Jericho said, hey, Tony, here's the deal. For 8 weeks in a row, you bring in a different fucking guy for me to goddamn beat on national television on our flagship television program. And one of them can be Colt Cabana, because now that's been revealed that it was Jericho's idea. So that's why he can, take credit for bringing Colt in to rub it in Punk's face. That was the whole point of that.
Did Jericho say that? Because I saw where Tony said it was his idea.
I saw a headline saying that it was Chris Jericho's idea, according to Colt Cabana. But nevertheless, we'll suss that out later on. But anyway, I'll do an 8-week program where I beat people on TV every week in main event matches, Tony, and then I will drop that title belt to somebody else on a $40 pay-per-view that nobody's going to buy on a Saturday afternoon at 4 o'clock in Texas. Brilliant.
Serious question. And again, I think they did, and I could be wrong, I want to say around 40,000 buys for FTR and the Briscoes, which is pretty impressive for a tag match.
Good luck on that for this one.
I was going to say, I know you got Chris Jericho here, but what are these matches and what is this card and why would anyone pay for this pay-per-view?
It sounds like a Rampage lineup. And that's... Again, that's Tony's problem is he's got his friendly action figures and his friendly action figures friends that he has to book. And he's going to make sure that we see Daniel Garcia and Wheeler Useless until the end of time. But boy, how about FTR versus any fucking body, or give us some Hobbs, or what? Where's poor Hook? What happened to Hook? Did somebody cut his hair?
Yeah, whatever happened to Hook?
Nobody knows.
We should do a list of the whatever happened to AEW edition, because there's so many guys. Whatever happened to Miro? Oh, Miro's off filming something. Okay, that aired. And that was months ago.
And I smelled it after it aired. All righty then. Santana and Ortiz still around?
Santana, I believe, is still hurt, although he's on the mend, and Ortiz is now aligned with Eddie Kingston.
Kingston. Hadn't seen him in a while. He probably ran out of people to beat up in the locker room.
If you told me, if I bought Ring of Honor, and I understood I was going to lose my TV, then I'm buying it from Sinclair and I'm losing my TV, and I had every intention on keeping this alive beyond just the catalog, which in and of itself should have some value. I have to think that the way Tony has rolled out and promoted Ring of Honor in the last 6 months, whatever it's been, almost, I guess less than a year, is the exact opposite way I would have done any of this. There's no TV show. There's not even a fucking presence on YouTube for the fucking show. They're throwing matches together no one cares about. He said Jericho all over Dynamite as the Ring of Honor champion. It hasn't helped. Hasn't helped anything. Where do you think... I mean, again, I think Tony had the best intentions buying Ring of Honor, but if you don't have a game plan, you got to be able to come up with a better one than this quickly.
Well, remember we say he announced it like 15 minutes after he signed the contract? Because he has no restraint. He has to blurt everything out. With a little thought, he could have done something like, ladies and gentlemen, see, then the problem becomes Tony making an announcement, because then the problem becomes Tony speaking on television in a public forum, and it's never good. But some announcement could have been made that the intention was, ladies and gentlemen, AEW, the fastest growing, newest wrestling promotion on television today, has purchased the assets and video library of Ring of Honor, a promotion dating back over 20 years that has seen some of the finest talent come through its doors, including Samoa Joe and CM Punk and this guy and that guy and many of your favorites and a bunch of the folks that are here in AEW today. And to make sure that that lineage goes on, AEW President Tony Khan, or whatever the fuck, will be announcing over a period of the next several months, not only ways that you can enjoy the tremendous legacy of Ring of Honor, but also its ongoing future, and set up a separate website and immediately have as much of the video catalog as you could rolled out on that. They already had the Ring of Honor site and the Honor Club. A lot of stuff was out there. And start pumping. Here is the legacy. Here's where these guys came from. Here was the groundbreaking, innovative, independent promotion that caused the WWE to have to form their own, as make it NXT, whatever, and show the best of the library and get people in and drive people to, whether it be the YouTube channel or whether it be something to sign up. You can make revenue off of that. Sell DVDs, compilation of collector's items they'd want on their shelf, of streaming, whatever the fuck, just with the library, and try to create interest in and build interest in the Ring of Honor brand with your national television distribution and your wider audience that you've got than that they had on their local Sinclair stations. And then that gives you months to plan for potentially a one-night tournament that you could do on pay-per-view, where you could actually put the top guys from AEW and bring in other top independent names that might make attractive matchups, and do an 8 or 12 man one night tournament on pay-per-view for that particular audience. And then you've established a world champion. And meanwhile, you are going out and shopping the idea of a Ring of Honor television show in some forum. Perhaps if you'd have done it in some coherent way, you could have sold the network on having your Friday night program be Ring of Honor. AEW presents Ring of Honor. Some people are going to say, well, they bought AEW. Well, goddamn, they probably got buyer's remorse. I don't think they care what the program is called if people would watch it, and it's being produced by the company they're doing business with. So fucking chill out there. And after a period of several months, and you've crowned a champion, and you've got brand awareness with your newer, younger, more media-savvy audience, what Ring of Honor is and what it means, and you've brought over a few announcers and miscellaneous personnel, then you could actually launch an ongoing Ring of Honor program, as I said, on the Friday night for 1 hour, or maybe there'd be interest by then if you had a coherent strategy. And then you start playing the games that will get everybody interested, where you're building Ring of Honor up to be almost an equal entity into people's minds as to AEW, especially if their inaugural champion means something, Bryan Danielson. Well, then you can start having defections, where this guy wants to break his AEW contract and go to Ring of Honor, maybe because he feels a better opportunity, or maybe because he wants to get even with the son of a bitch that beat him in the tournament, and he's got to follow him over there. And maybe some ex-Ring of Honor talent that you've been holding back, even though you've been paying them, and you sign them up where they wouldn't go anywhere 3 months ago or whatever the fuck. But now's the time to debut 2 or 3 of them to come in and fuck things up because they're pissed off and they're outsiders. And it ain't that fun. Or you can just sign the fucking contract, buy the thing, blurt it out on national television, and keep every goddamn title going just like it was, and start defending them in 2 weeks on your program. I don't know. If I had time to think of something, I'd think of a better idea, but I just blurted all out of my ass.
Well, let's not talk about what you're blurting out of your ass. Let's talk about what you can...
Hey, I haven't ass blurted as much as I did last week. I'll have you know, on Monday I shit myself 3 times.
Well, you shit yourself, or as we coined it on YouTube, you soiled yourself.
I really like the way you cleaned that up.
Well, there was no choice, but...
I like the way you titled the video, too.
Instead of talking about what's coming out of one end, why don't we talk about what you could be putting into another end? And of course, I'm talking about the act of eating, the ingestion of food, and you want the finest food the finest steaks, and of course, the finest franks from Omaha Steaks.
That's right, folks, whether you're named Frank or not. If you'd like a big slab of meat shoved down your gullet, and boy, who wouldn't this time of the year, then all you got to do is go to the people at Holliday.
At Holliday.
At Holliday, at Omaha Steaks for the holidays. Here's what you need to do. Here's exactly what you need to do. You need to achieve gifting greatness. And the only way you're going to do that is if you make people happy on just the most basic sense imaginable. I'm talking about a full belly, sitting around a holiday dinner table full of cattle byproduct that was prepared in a taste-tempting and mouth-watering way, and that comes from only the finest ingredients, and that's what you get when you go to Omaha Steaks. You get the finest ingredients and special curated gift packages to help take the guesswork out of gifting, because you don't want to be guessing when you're gifting. You only want to guess when you grift, and that's completely different. Nevertheless, you can go to omahasteaks.com right now and take advantage. I can't believe I'm going to say this. 50% off site-wide. Meat half off. When's the last time you saw that advertisement? It's almost like they need to get rid of these cows, because elsewise somebody's going to do a forensic examination and figure out exactly who killed them. Because elsewise, I don't know why you would sell fine quality meat half off. And if you go to omahasteaks.com, take advantage of the 50% off site-wide sale, and you use the code JCE at checkout, you're going to get another $30 off your order. Folks, the butcher's cut filet mignons, the air-chilled boneless chicken, the ultra-juicy burgers, easy-to-prepare comfort meals. You wouldn't believe how comfortable I curled up in one of these comfort meals the other night, laid right in the middle of the mashed potatoes. It was so comfortable, I went right to sleep. But Omaha Steaks, they are shipping experts. They're ready to ship your order right away, and you can shop early now, beat the shipping rush. It's a gift from the heart that will be remembered with every unforgettable bite, ladies and gentlemen. When people saw into this delicious cow, and they joined the cult of meat with extra cheese, thanks to your friends at Omaha Steaks, you're going to be having a smile on your face they'll have to wipe off with a fucking sandblaster. So, once again, did I say meat half off, 50% off site-wide? A minimum order may be required. Why not? If they're going to sell you meat at half price plus an additional $30 off when you use the code JCE, well, you might as well order every cow in the plant. Just tell them, knock the horns off and bring it out to me on a leash. Send it all. You'll never get this price again. What are you, crazy? Fuck. Anyway, omahasteaks.com, 50% off site-wide, minimum order required, $30 off with the code JCE. The only other thing they can possibly do is when you put this food in your mouth, they can come over personally and rub your throat so you don't have to chew and swallow.
But they won't be doing that. You'll be swallowing and chewing on your own.
Well, the last time I got a package from Omaha Steaks, a guy came into the house about 9 o'clock that night and started rubbing my throat. I thought that was part of the service. Are you mean to tell me that was unrelated?
You really have too many people on your property. That's unrelated to Omaha Steaks. I don't know what it is related to, but not Omaha Steaks.
That no good throat rubber. omahasteaks.com.
Well, Jim, you and I are both big fans of Omaha Steaks, and of course, we like a good steak, a good burger, a good hot dog, all the things they have.
I like a good wiener.
Well, on the topic of food that you eat, as opposed to all the other food.
To all the other foodstuffs that you just look at.
Recently, there's been a guy in the news, and I read this in the New York Post maybe 2 months ago. Have you been following this guy? I have the article here.
I haven't been following any guy. I don't know who you're trying to accuse here.
There's an article here about this guy. The headline is, I eat animal liver and bone marrow. Here's what I look like after 30 years. And it's a guy, the self-proclaimed liver king, his name's Brian Johnson, as ripped as any human being you have ever seen, and he eats raw animal organs, and he says that what he had said was that alone, over such a long period of time, had caused him to become what Hercules Hernandez wished he could have been.
Okay, I don't believe that. They're also, without exercise, just eating the raw organs of the various animals, the duck-billed platypuses and the ocelots and whatever.
Well, I don't know about those animals, but it says here, one of the captions for a photo of this jacked man says, the social media influencer lives on a diet of protein shakes, eggs, and beef liver.
Oh, can you imagine what his
raw beef
farts
liver
must smell like? Protein shakes, raw liver, and what the fuck?
Eggs.
Eggs. Oh, well, of course. Hard-boiled, apparently.
What are your thoughts in general on raw food, whether it be sushi or whether it be actual raw intestines or organs of animals?
Okay, well, I didn't think at once, being a Southern boy and always going to a good fish fry, I didn't think I would like sushi, but I have warmed up to, I'm not going all the way with the heads and the eyeballs, anything looking at me. I don't like tentacles or fucking things that have suction cups on them or whatever, but some regular, nice, good quality sushi I can go for. But I think everything mostly has to be cooked in some respect past that, don't you? What are we going to eat? I mean, raw vegetables, you can eat that. I don't know if I'd recommend eating a raw potato or a raw fucking, I don't like hard broccoli.
Well, Jim, I've just sent you a link. It should be arriving in your email momentarily. So you can see what this man looks like, but also what he says he was eating, because he says it's from an ancestral living diet that includes raw animal liver.
Aha!
I've sent you a link and you should have it.
I have it right here. It's Liver King. Let me just click on this bad boy from the New York Post. Oh, come on. Oh, come on. There's no way. This guy's got an 8-pack of abs. He looks like he's 270. It's fucking, the vein on his arm alone looks like a fucking garden snake. And there he is chewing on raw, bloody meat. Ancestral living is what he preaches.
Now let's go with the idea that he was claiming this. Do you think if it worked, if eating raw animal organs gave you a look like that, would more people actually do it?
Well, I don't. He's gone too far here. Most people probably wouldn't want to look like this, because then you're attracting a lot of attention. I don't know. I think if he just maybe ate raw meat for 15 years instead of 30, he's gone too far. He also takes freezing cold ice baths, and when he goes fishing, he catches fish with just his teeth.
Wouldn't you want to do that?
No, I'm not going to stick my face in a fucking pond and just try to chomp down on a goddamn trout.
He looks a little like Tommaso Ciampa, doesn't he?
He does. He has the Tommaso beard that Tommaso used to have. But I don't think Tommaso's never been this ripped.
No, he's like a lean Liver King. He definitely all of a sudden has a different physique. But let's go back to Liver King.
Well,
here.
this guy, the picture of this guy when he was a teenager, he looks like he's one of the boys. That's before he started eating all the raw cow balls and shit.
So I saw this in the New York Post, and it started getting a ton of attention. All of a sudden that the Liver King, I don't know why they were promoting it. He's a social media influencer. I don't know what exactly they were promoting, but they were promoting him and his lifestyle. And then last week I saw an article in the New York Post. Liver King ripped after leaked email claims $11,000 a month steroid use.
Now that I believe.
You've dealt with a lot of wrestlers. What's the biggest monthly steroid allowance you know of?
Oh, good. I never asked for a retail price. And of course, when I was close enough to people who had been doing that thing, it'd been 30 years ago or whatever the fuck. So I have no idea but that sounds quite excessive even for modern day prices on just something for personal use. Doesn't it you?
The father of two, this is from the New York Post, an article by Emily Lafoy. Is that how you say it?
Lafoy?
Lefroy, excuse me.
Capital L, small a, capital F. All right.
The father of two has been posting to Instagram since August 2021, amassing over 1.7 million followers, and swearing that his intense workouts and eating as a modern caveman, in quotes, are the secret to how he's achieved and maintained his ripped body.
I have this article now because I clicked on the link on the other article, and I'm seeing this now. Who has posted videos showing him chowing down on raw animal liver, protein shakes, egg yolks, and bone marrow, claims his body is 100% natural. Bullshit. I don't care whether he's been on a steady diet of Rambler's road apples and Rocky Mountain oysters. He's also been on a diet of, as Phil Hickerson said, shooting them steroids in his booty.
Let me stop for a second because there's more to the story, obviously. Do you think there should be a stigma on steroid use so that this guy who's spending $11,000 a month apparently would be ashamed of it? Should that stigma be there?
Well, with what we now know that, I mean, the thing they were originally invented and original and supposed application of them was to help people recover from injuries and grow muscle or repair muscle or whatever. But like anything else, if you just do them nonstop and do them only for bodybuilding and don't do them for any therapeutic reason, then they do damage to tendons, ligaments, etc., blah, blah, blah. I'm not going to sit here and litigate, the steroid scandals of the last 30 years. They do increase athletic ability, which is why if that's the whole bone of contention, it's not a fair playing field when somebody's on them and somebody's not, and they're expected to do the same things or compete under the same, parameters. But, I mean, this is ridiculous. Besides, how old is this fucking guy? Where is his age listed in here? 45 years old. He's going to have a fucking heart attack. He looks like you said, Hercules Hernandez, if Hercules had really gotten out of control with the steroids. Imagine that. He's going to have a heart attack or a stroke or whatever the fuck. What is his reason to look like this? He's not a pro wrestler. If you're going to talk people into fucking eating goddamn raw bull's bladders, then you wouldn't have to look this good to fucking do it. There shouldn't be a stigma like, oh, you should go to jail because you're fucking hurting yourself unless you're, making somebody else take them. But there should be like, what the fuck's the matter with you? And I mean, that's with most of the boys too. When they get this Brian Cage, he'll fucking explode when he's 40 probably. And it didn't make him a good wrestler. He just looks like a fucking inflated clown. So, I guess if you want to, ruin your health, do whatever you do, and you're not even getting I understand when the boys have to get bigger or get more cut or whatever because they're on television. And if, okay, I'm going to make X million dollars or X amount of dollars for 3 to 5 years. I'm young. I'll take a shot at it. But this fucking guy, yeah.
If you aren't a professional wrestler, and there's still the stigma there, and we could talk about whether or not there should be for professional wrestling. If you're not a professional wrestler or a football player, and I guess I'm not even counting growth hormone. If I was, I got to count basketball players and everything else. If you're not an athlete or in a movie, is there any reason for the average person to be on steroids?
Yeah, because, well, the people that really get hung up on bodybuilding and be fanatical about it. Remember, we've talked about Sid. Sid used to have a body image issue where if he hadn't worked out for 2 weeks, he didn't want to take his T-shirt off. Look at fucking Sid. But they don't see the same thing. I think Vince had a bit of that. You hear stories where they see themselves in the mirror and they look spectacularly in shape to 99.9% of the world, but they think that somehow they look horrible, and so they do more of this shit. And that's, I don't see any reason why that just to be big, if you weren't a public figure, just have a great body, that you would fucking ingest fucking monkey hormones.
You think people get hooked on the idea of having, again, from nothing to 1.7 million social media followers? To a lot of people, that seems to be a big deal. Now, I'm not saying it isn't a big deal in terms of social media, but just it's a big deal to amass that, like, personally. Like, look what I did.
Well, I'm trying to do it the opposite. I started out with about 1.5 million, and I'm trying to run them all off. I get that's, yeah, okay, that's a thing. I'll figure out a way to eat raw animals and shoot chemicals into my body that will potentially kill me before my time, but a lot of people will follow me on Twitter.
Well, Jim, there's a happy ending to the story.
Really?
The Liver King.
Who's he jacking off?
Well, this is from, once again, the New York Post, now by Lee Brown. He's working the Liver King beat. Liver King is now eating raw humble pie. Here's a quote. "I fully own that I fucked up. I lied," the shirtless influencer said in a video, finally admitting that his stomach-churning diet of raw liver and testicles was...
Really is eating the testicles? He's really eating the balls.
I guess so. I didn't see that in the headline of the previous one. Was not the secret to his eye-popping physique. Quote, "Yes, I've done steroids. And yes, I'm on steroids." He admitted late Thursday, days after his 11,000 a month habit was exposed. "I'm making this video to apologize because I fucked up," the primal living fraud, real name Brian Johnson, said in his mea culpa.
Primal living fraud.
"Because I'm embarrassed and ashamed, because I lied and I misled a lot of people. I have only myself to blame. I did that, and it was all wrong," he said, vowing to be better. What do you think? I mean, the idea that he immediately, after everyone said, "Hey, what an asshole," said, "I'm sorry."
As soon as everybody found out it was true, he immediately admitted to it. Well, that's an honorable thing, and he's going to get off the balls, right? Is that what we're hearing? He's declaring himself ball-free from now on, not going to keep eating the balls?
Well, that's actually the only part, I guess, that really we don't have any clarity on, which is he's admitting now that he was on steroids. Is he saying I was on steroids and I actually wasn't eating all that shit? Or is he saying I'm on steroids and I also do
and balls?
Well, I was going to say liver. I'm also doing this extreme caveman eating. You went right to the balls.
I think he's admitted that he not only was on steroids, but that he was eating the balls.
Would you eat an animal's testicles if you were told that it's cooked in a delicious way and you're going to love it and you won't even know it's balls?
What do you think a Rocky Mountain oyster is?
I don't know, because I haven't eaten it.
Back in my day, some of the finer steakhouses, especially out in the western part of the United States, actually had a dish, mountain oysters. They were balls. And some people like the balls. I never wanted to even test the balls. So I ain't ever ate no balls. I ain't ate no balls, no balls, no balls, and nobody ate my balls.
Well, this Liver King story ties into professional wrestling suddenly.
Oh, boy.
I have an article, Jim, from today, as we are recording, December 7th, 2022, from Jack Hobbs. Joe Rogan accuses Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson of steroid use. Can you smell what The Rock is cooking? It's steroids, claimed Joe Rogan on an episode of his podcast. controversial podcast host and UFC commentator Joe Rogan demanded Sunday on an episode of the Joe Rogan Experience that Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, quote, come clean over whether or not he uses steroids. In his podcast, the host was discussing disgraced fitness influencer Brian Johnson, known online as the Liver King, who was exposed for taking steroids instead of following the ancestral diet of raw meat he promoted online. So let me stop there for a moment. Any thoughts on this initially?
Well, Joe Rogan likes to stir people up, doesn't he? How the fuck did The Rock get hooked up with the Liver King? Has Joe Rogan been waiting for a chance to say, well, by God, I think The Rock's on the sauce, and suddenly the Liver King put it in his mind? Is he out to slander poor Dwayne Johnson?
It is like the one thing not said. It's like, oh, he's such a big star and this and that. Yeah, and he's also loaded to the tits on the finest fucking hormones and steroids known to man.
He's got great genetics, though.
Of course there's that, but I'll go back to this article here. Here's from Joe Rogan. Here's what he said. Rogan said that he was not surprised at all over the revelation about Brian Johnson, that is, and accused The Rock of similar behavior. Quote, there's no way you can look like that in your 40s, said Rogan. The Rock should come clean right now. He should make a video in response to the Liver King video. I need to talk to you because The Rock's been lying. There's not a fucking chance in hell he's clean, slammed the 55-year-old host.
Maybe Joe Rogan's having that late 50s life crisis.
Are they building a match? Why did they put Rogan's age there for some reason? Quote, not a chance in hell, as big as The Rock is, at 50? He's so massive, and he's so different than he was when he was 30. There's a responsibility you have to people who are listening to you. If you don't want to talk about it, that's one thing. But if you do talk about it, there's a responsibility you have to people listening to you, and I think you have to be honest about it, which is why I'm honest about it.
What the fuck is he talking about?
I don't think there's anything wrong with taking hormone replacement. Rogan's saying he's on the gas, and he admits it, and he talks about why he does it, and he doesn't run from it, and it bothers him when other people pretend, I think this is what he's saying, like they're living clean lifestyles where everything, the way they look, is completely based on their workout regimen and what they're eating, when there's lots and lots of help. And he's...
Well, wait a minute. Joe Rogan is 50-something years old, and he's a podcaster and comedian. Why is he taking steroids?
Well, he's into MMA. They love steroids.
But he's not fighting anybody for real.
Well, he fights people in the dojo. I mean, he does his own...
Oh, good Lord.
He trains.
Well, then train your ass off. Nick Bockwinkel looked better than Joe Rogan did when he was older than fucking Joe Rogan. He wasn't on fucking steroids. That don't mean anything, but goddamn. So now is it that Joe Rogan is pissed off because he's on steroids and because he's older than Dwayne Johnson? He's jealous of the way Dwayne Johnson looks.
Well, there is something here at the end of the story. Again, knowing nothing previously about their any involvement with them, it says here, joining Rogan on the show is another fitness influencer named Derek, who said The Rock admitted to using steroids when he was 18 or 19, but has since claimed to be steroid-free. So that started it. And then it also says here, earlier this year, the Black Adam star, The Rock, spoke out about Rogan after the host was heard uttering a racial slur, prompting Spotify to cut nearly 100 episodes. Rogan is also accused of spreading misinformation regarding the COVID-19 pandemic.
So it sounds like Joe Rogan is pissed off at The Rock, pissed him off, and wants to malign The Rock. He looks great. He's always looked great. He's always trained hard.
If he says he's steroid-free, though, I mean, come on.
Well,
that's Hogan. That's like Hulk Hogan.
Is it semantics, though? There are other types of supplements besides steroids. I don't think he's overdoing it. Because he's always looked great to begin with. Luger. You think Luger only looked that way because of drugs? You can't do that if it's only drugs. And you honestly can't do it like that if it's only fucking working out.
And The Rock was in great shape. Luger, like when he wrestled, he looks like he's twice the size of that now, and he's 50.
Oh, Rock looks twice the size of Luger, or what? Now,
he looks twice
the size of what?
He looks twice the size of either Luger or himself. Like at the peak. The Rock.
No, you go back and look at a picture of Lex. I'm not saying he does. Rock is more. He's more cut. He's more defined. He's a multi-fucking billionaire. He can afford any good food, any good training, any good trainers, and any good stuff. But he's not nearly, nor has he ever been in his life, as jacked up as Lex was at one point.
I don't know. The Rock looks massive and jacked. Luger never had that kind of size.
I don't know who you were looking at. I'll bet you $5.
Okay.
I'll bet you $5. Look at Lex at his biggest and look at fucking Rock at his biggest, and then you tell me who was biggest.
There you go, Prize Picks. Find the way to make this work.
Yeah.
But going back to what I asked you earlier, if there is a stigma about steroids, and let's say The Rock thinks, hey, there's nothing wrong with me doing this. I'm an action star. I'm in my 50s and I don't want to look like shit. And, you know, I used to be a wrestler, so I have appearances to keep up. And again, I'm an action star. I'm doing this. I'm under a doctor's care. My health is okay. You have nothing to worry about. Is there anything wrong with him actually saying that?
Actually, probably yes, because then just every nitwit and moron out there that all they will hear is The Rock does it, so why shouldn't I? It's like with Mick Foley. He took all those bumps and they ignore the talent and the personality and the charisma, blah, blah, blah. All that people want is if they already are predisposed to do something, or if they're desperate to do something and don't know how, and they think, oh, well, The Rock did it this way, so I'll just do that. So I can see why he wouldn't want it, because, again, nobody has those genetics. Nobody has that opportunity. Nobody's going to be the biggest movie star in the world. You're just going to be some clown lifting weights in your garage, shooting monkey hormones up your ass and ruining your health for no fucking reward. So I can see why he wouldn't say, oh, well, it's okay as long as you have the finest doctor and you're an intelligent human being and you have a lifetime of knowledge of training and working out and people that, you know, do it with you and design your programs and a chef and take your meals with you everywhere and all that other stuff. But they'll just hear I'll do the steroids.
I have a quote here from The Rock. It says, my physique is all natural. It comes from eating raw liver and testicles.
Oh, come on now. Everybody knows that he hadn't had any balls in his mouth since his rookie year as Rocky Maivia.
Right. Did you see the video The Rock released of himself going, I guess, to the old 7-Eleven he says he used to shoplift from and buying all their Snickers bars?
I saw a picture. I didn't see the video. I saw the picture and the thing on Twitter. That's another nice thing. Well, there you go.
He's always filming himself doing these nice things.
I thought that was the security camera at the cashier's desk there that caught that.
Is it the same owners of the 7-Eleven that were there 35 years ago or whatever?
I don't know. They may have been the one to take the loss. I don't know. Do these 7-Elevens get fucking passed down in the family?
You like Snickers?
How about them Snickers?
Of the chocolate bars out there, what do you think of Snickers?
Snickers is all right, but I was always a Three Musketeers guy when I was little, but now I'm a Reese Cup fella.
Why Three Musketeers and not Milky Way? You just don't like caramel?
Because my mother started buying me the Three Musketeers, and I enjoyed the flamboyant guys with swords and hats on the wrapper, and the delicious nougat inside, and there you go. It just nothing else tasted right.
All right, Jim. Well, let's see how these questions taste for you. Our next one was sent to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com from Keith in Boston. Based on film quality and performance, who would Jim say is the best wrestler to get into acting? While The Rock may have the most box office success, I'm not compelled to his movies as the star. I'm not compelled to his movies. Okay, that is what it says. I'm not compelled to his movies as the star. My favorite wrestler in a movie role is Roddy Piper in They Live. Jesse Ventura is a close second, but had more valuable roles than Piper did to me. I thought Kane was great in See No Evil, despite being a kind of weak movie. There's a long list. Hulk Hogan, Terry Funk, Andre the Giant, John Cena, etc. Who does Jim consider the best wrestler in a significant movie role?
I always loved Terry Funk in anything he did because he was still Terry. And especially, you know, Frankie the Thumper or whatever the fuck. It was, you know, let's face it, even The Rock I think you said it best a few weeks ago on one of these shows. The Rock is fantastic at being The Rock. But he's just such an outsized personality that he's always good and entertaining and you want to watch him, but it's not like he's a great actor. But I can't think of any wrestler turned actor in a TV part or a movie part that has really, you know, pressed any fucking parameters on the Oscars or the Emmys, or, you know, is going to take over Meryl Streep's position of honor, whatever. But Terry always seemed like he just took to it naturally. And was, you know, whatever that fucking weirdo that he was going to be, he put some of him in it, but he was different. You know, I like Terry in the movies. And Piper was great in They Live. And Roddy he could kind of inhabit a role. I'm not saying that he was going to, you know, give Orson Welles any, you know, sleepless nights, but, you know, but Piper and Funk and, I mean, Andre was he was being Andre. Hogan was always just so over the top, clowny or cartoony or whatever. He was just being Hulk Hogan in a movie. What do you think? Who were there? Is there anybody I'm not thinking about that really transitioned into great acting skills?
You know, he never got any really great roles, but the limited stuff I saw with Steve Austin, I think he could have done better stuff.
Yeah, there you go. Because, you know, but at the same time, I don't know if Steve would have been a multifaceted, like a comedy hero, right. But he's, you know, he's an action movie star.
It may be Piper, because, I mean, everyone loves They Live. I love Body Slam. That's like my favorite wrestling movie ever. And everything he did after that, I mean, the limited stuff you saw, the tag team show with him and Ventura, the Bad B movies, Hell Comes to Frogtown, I mean, just various things. Piper was pretty good. Terry, it's a weird thing. And I don't know the answer. I love Terry Funk. Is Terry Funk good at acting? Or do I love Terry Funk so much that I'm just happy to see him on TV? I don't know. Frankie the Thumper's an interesting role. It's a very interesting movie and a very interesting role, and it's one of the few Sylvester Stallone movies that made no money. Hogan, Rocky III is clearly his best thing. And then after that, it's what? Suburban Commando and
But you know what?
No
There's
Holds
the
Barred.
thing is, the Rocky III role was the classic wrestler is a rotten actor, and he said the lines in a wooden fashion, but because he's so big and visual and it's a memorable scene, it gets over.
Brett was on TV. Brett really didn't have any movies other than documentaries about Brett. Who else? Andre was in Mickey and Maude, so was Big John Studd and various other people. What'd you think of Andre as an actor?
Well, again, I mean,
Andre, Princess Bride. I should.
Princess Bride. That's the big one, and I mean, he got raves from the cast there because he was such a nice, you know, gentle giant fellow at that time. But well, let's go back a little ways though, because in the olden days, is really the most prolific wrestler turned actor maybe in the history of Hollywood. Would he be Nat Pendleton? Think about it. You saw Nat Pendleton play a heavy or a cop or a private detective he was in Buck Privates with Abbott and Costello, a drill sergeant, whatever. He was in the movies for 25 years. He was still a pro wrestler. He was in the 24 Olympics. Then he was a pro wrestler for a while, but he was in the movies for 25 years and did pretty good. There was old Lenny Montana made The Godfather.
That's a pretty notable role.
But I'm just trying to think of most times when a wrestler, Gorgeous George was the first pro wrestler that got a starring role in a movie because he was so hot on television. Alias the Champ in 1949. I have an original movie poster, but that was a B movie that made no money, and Gorgeous George was a shits. But it was a starring role for the hottest wrestler in the country at the time. So
it's amazing Buddy Rogers never got any film roles, even though there was a famous Buddy Rogers in Hollywood. But beyond that, the wrestler Buddy Rogers.
Yeah, that is, when you think about it, is in almost any other era he would have. He wasn't the biggest box office attraction except regionally in St. Louis and Toronto, a few other places, while George was on top of the Los Angeles television. And then by the time that Rogers was really the man in the entire business, wrestling was off network TV, and then he was retired and out of it by the time that things came back around in the late 70s, early 80s, except for Andy Kaufman getting him on TV.
Based on anyone you've been around in wrestling, who that never went into films, never did any acting, do you think could have been a good actor?
Ooh, boy. Again, Mick Foley could probably do any acting part. Just because he's so real and genuine and well-spoken and thoughtful and studies things and has a way of coming off natural. MJF is going to be fun to see what happens in 10 years or so. And unless wrestlers are so ill thought of by that point that nobody wants to get them in a fucking movie. Rhea Ripley needs to be the biggest female action star in Hollywood, because what other actress do they have with that size and that look? What other wrestler can speak that well and has that look? She's very unique, and I see a crossover movie star waiting to fucking happen.
Do you think MJF is too old to play a high school bully?
No, fuck no. He can shave extra close, and they'll buy him at 17.
All right, you'll buy that at 17. And there's no easy transition out of that. Let's get to our next question here. Jim, several people have been sending in, and you brought it up earlier, quotes from AEW's Athena. She was on Busted Open.
Oh, boy.
And she had several quotes about the various comments, and it even got to this show, of course, about her roughness or physicality, whatever you want to call it, in a match. Well, at least one match we saw, but apparently other matches as well, maybe. Here's the quote. People forget that girls get hit just as hard as the guys. I have to sit there and see Jon Moxley and Jericho and Yuta and all these guys hit the tar out of each other. I guarantee you, if I was a man, I feel like there wouldn't be as much backlash or anything like that. It's all these old bloated farts that want to sit there and tell us, oh no, we need to go out there and look pretty. And then they complain when it's a dance. They complain when we hit hard. Get over it. We're out here to be just as good as the guys, and we give it our all. We put in all of this time and effort to hone our craft, and I feel like sometimes we are underappreciated when we do things like that.
Jesus Christ. They don't get it, do they? This is an example of the younger generation there at AEW taking advice. And by the way, if anybody told her to go out and look pretty, that's a fucking fruitless request.
Oh, will you stop? Be nice.
Come on. No, it's ridiculous. We're not talking about working stiff. Talking about working sloppy work, reckless work, being goofy, swinging shit that people ain't ready for. And she was working with some job girl from Canada or somewhere, I guess. They said, oh, well, they agreed to it. Well, this girl's had 15 fucking matches. She don't know what she's fucking doing to begin with. It's not working stiff or hitting each other hard. It's being sloppy and reckless and not knowing what the fuck you're doing. And that's what I was seeing. And that's what a lot of other people inside the business, at least, were. The fans that were watching the clip were just like, Jesus Christ, she owe that girl money or whatever the fuck, blah, blah, blah. But no, I was looking at somebody that don't know how to work stiff safely because apparently she don't know how to work at all yet. And I don't know how it's translated in her mind that she and the other girl should go out and do what the guys do. When's the last time you saw one of the guys take their big ass and just fucking jump up in the air and land on somebody's face with it, like Athena did to, who's it, Britt Baker? And broke her nose, or whatever the fuck. And we explained when we broke that clip down. A lot of people said when she picked that girl up in the vertical suplex position and just walked over and just chucked her out. Well, the girl's feet came down first. Yeah, barely. Luckily, because I explained how the little fucking short Athena could barely clear the fucking top rope with the girl, and it could have ended badly. There wasn't a lot of room for error in a meaningless match.
And we want it to look stiff, not be stiff.
Yes, that's the idea. You hit hard in safe places, or you master the art of working to where it looks like you're hitting hard any place. You don't just hit hard indiscriminately, throwing them wild, coming from every direction where you don't know what the fuck's going on, unless you're just a bunch of marks, which is what many of today's modern pro wrestling athletes are. And don't even understand these things that I'm explaining that we were teaching in wrestling school 30 fucking years ago. Because they've read shit on the internet, so they think they know everything. And it's the bloated old farts that just don't want them to get over. I got news for you, Athena. You ain't gonna get over, bloated old farts or not. If somebody put a fucking hose of helium up your ass and filled you up, you wouldn't get over.
It was the Sex Pistols, Jim, who called The Who boring old farts, leading to Pete Townsend confronting Steve Jones and Paul Cook, mistaking them for Johnny Rotten and yelling at them, which led to the song Who Are You? But that was boring old farts. What do you think works better?
Brian, by the way, who lasted longer, the Sex Pistols or The Who?
Well, you know the answer to that. The two were still going on. Which worked better, boring old farts or bloated old farts?
Well, boring old farts, I guess, would be better than being bloated because you could be boring but still be in good health. But if you're bloated, well, then your health is being called into question.
So the skinny old farts are not part of the problem.
Skinny old farts are not part of the problem, like me. Because now I'm a formerly...
Does she know you've lost weight? That's my next question.
Yeah, I'm a formerly bloated old fart, but now I'm a skinny old fart, so I'm not part of the problem.
Well, Jim, you may not be part of the problem, but maybe you could be part of the solution. And maybe you need to just chill out a little bit. And we have a new sponsor we could tell the listeners about to help a Jim Cornette or anyone out there chill out a little bit.
Well, that's right. And when I first heard about this new sponsor, I thought, oh, great, we've got a weekly horror movie creature feature coming up that we're going to be plugging. But no, it's Sunday Scaries, but that is not a competitor program to Svengoolie. Sunday Scaries is a brand new line of CBD gummies that were made to defeat the crap that life will throw at you. And I didn't really understand until I got the material. I want to run some of this by you, Brian, because you may not understand Sunday Scaries. Well, Sunday Scaries are apparently the horrible feeling that you get in the pit of your stomach, the oh shit moment, the stressful, the nervous, the can't sleep moment that hit you on Sunday evenings when you think about going to work or to school or just rejoining life on Monday morning. A lot of people feel that way. They don't want to go back to the grind, and they get nervous, they get tense, they get all strung out and worried, and that's the Sunday Scaries. But now there's a way to combat these Sunday Scaries, and of course, life being scary in general, because it can happen Sunday night, Monday night, too, any day with a Y in it, and twice on Sunday sometimes. They have some examples here. Life is scary when you quit your job and literally nobody noticed. Has that ever happened to you?
It has not.
Hadn't happened to me either, but I'd bet it'd be scary.
I make sure people notice.
As a matter of fact, most of the time people write about it in the newspaper when I leave somewhere. Now, here's another example. We've all been through this. Life is scary when you realize you're stuck in the middle seat on an airplane between two guys waiting for seatbelt extensions. Now, that's happened to me. It was on the same flight where Cowboy Lang was on the flight, and they wouldn't charge him half price. Nevertheless, here's another example. Life is scary when you accidentally screen shared your Slack page with you trash talking your boss. Here's another one.
Yeah.
Life is scary when you accidentally screen share your resume on job boards during a Zoom business call. Is there a dictionary of terms, synonyms, antonyms, a translation guide? They're using the modern language. Life is scary when you wake up and realize you texted your ex a "you up" text. Now, see, I'd do that. If I'd broken up with somebody, I'd want to wake them up in the middle of the night and ruin their sleep. Life is scary when your punishment for coming in dead last on your fantasy football team is to wear a skirt during your next golf round. Now, that happens to everybody. Every time I play golf after coming in dead last on my fantasy football team, I wear a dress. I could throw some in. Life is scary when you're sitting at the La Quinta Motor Inn at the Tulsa airport, knowing that you have to go to the assembly center where at least 7 full-grown adults are going to pull a knife on you and or try to hit you over the head with a blunt instrument or a brick. I wish we'd have had the Sunday Scary CBDs back in the Mid-South Wrestling days. If there are the perfect CBD gummies for professionals on the grind, super moms, students, party animals, regretful drunk sexters, and everyone in between. So basically, it appears that they're selling this product based on the fact that they have a good indication or reason to believe that you're going to fuck up your life and do something stupid and stress yourself out about it. And that's why they have made these deliciously cute, vitamin-boosted CBD gummies that will chill you out. They will shut off your brain. As a matter of fact, you eat a couple of these gummies, they will be able to hook you up to the finest machine at the Mayo Clinic. You will have no brain function whatsoever.
What are you saying?
Well, what it's gonna
No, it's not gonna do any of that. No. You're gonna be fine. Wow, I don't even know how to repair this.
It's gonna put you in a state of bliss where you just won't care about what's going on around you. You won't care when they call in your closest family members and ask how they want to dispose of your body.
That's not what's going to happen here. You're going to have bliss.
You will sit there and you will giggle when you are hooked up to that plug in the wall, and Cousin Bertha that always wanted your vacation home, she's the one to snatch that plug out of the wall. You won't care because Sunday Scary CBD gummies are going to help you decompress and clear your mind and fall asleep better. If you're a horrible sleeper, you won't be staring at the ceiling and worrying. No, your eyes will be closed and you won't even know the outside world exists until some electroshock therapy is applied to you to wake you up on Monday morning ready to start the work week with a smile. So, whether you need to take the edge off, folks, whether you need to calm your racing mind, sleep better, just chill out, just sit on the couch and veg out, play video games or whatever the young kids do these days, you take 2 of these CBD gummies every day to keep the scaries away. And right now, you can go to Sunday, that's spelled Sunday like the day, not the dessert, Sunday, Scaries, Scaries, SundayScaries.com, and use my promo code JCE. I'm the king of relaxation.
Yeah.
Everybody knows I haven't spent a day in my life being high-strung. Promo code JCE, 25% off of these fine CBD gummies at SundayScaries.com. Originally, I thought that said Sunday Scabies.
It's not what it says, no.
That is not what it says at all. I need to go to the eye doctor. SundayScaries.com, promo code JCE, 25% off. Folks, what a long, strange trip it's going to be. Let us know. Take a couple of these and then let us know what happens. They're great for dealing with crying babies on planes, Zoom fatigue. If
Podcasting, I'm taking some right now.
Are you taking some right now?
This unicorn jerky. Yeah, this is actually pretty good.
Oh, the unicorn jerky. That's right. I had the horn.
The funniest joke that Pete Holmes guy ever had, he goes, unicorn, shouldn't it be unihorn?
So that's the funniest one he ever had, right?
That was pretty good when he did it. He had a better audience. He had a better audience too.
Life is scary.
Are you on this right now?
When you wake up and realize you've hit the snooze button 16 times. Take a gummy. Life is scary when it's your first date and you need to fart. I got to be honest with you, I always wanted to get that over with right at the top of the program. Because if they could get past that first initial fart,
the program,
then I knew that, well, yeah, they need to get with the program. You're going to be around me. You're going to hear some Putin. You're going to hear some Putin. You're going to smell some gaseous emissions. And once you get used to that, then let's get the party started. SundayScaries.com.
If you say so.
Promo code JCE.
Well, Jim, let's talk about something scary. And of course, a wrestling war is quite a scary thing. And last week here on the show, we talked about a program I had about the start of the Dallas wrestling war. I have one here. Dallas Wrestling, Pappy Showland, where you see wrestlers of proven ability. Tuesday, May 25th, 1954, Dallas, Texas. The headline, Dallas Wrestling War Ends. World's greatest wrestlers to be seen at Sportatorium starting next Tuesday. So we're following up now on a year earlier. Things are really bad. The Sportatorium is burned down.
Well, I was about to say it had been going on for a year. The Houston group trying to get into Dallas, into that market. Their first live television broadcast, the feed had mysteriously gone out, and then through some happenstance, the actual world-famous Sportatorium on the corner of Katie's and Industrial in Dallas caught fire and half of it burned down. And over that period of time, they had switched buildings, went out to the fairgrounds, and now I understand that they had renovated the Sportatorium by that point, the showplace of the South, and it was ready for action, and they settled the war. What does that program tell you? What facts have we unearthed from this war of 70 years ago and how it was solved?
Several interesting things. Let's go first to the Sportatorium, because that's one of the big stories here on the front page. Beautiful new building to see stars. The Sportatorium, the most beautiful sports arena in the Southwest, and one of the newest buildings of its kind in the country, will be the scene of the country's best wrestling action next Tuesday night and every Tuesday night thereafter. With the end of what most people called a wrestling war, plans were laid for all Dallas wrestling to come under one banner and under one roof, and with the successful completion of negotiations, next Tuesday night, June 1st, was decided upon as the great day. The news will be welcomed by Dallas Mat fans, who will benefit greatly from the merger. The new Sportatorium has a seating capacity of 5,500, with every seat affording a magnificent view of the ring. Excellent parking facilities surround the building, making it easy to get into either wet weather or dry. I'll stop there for a second.
I'm just going to tell you that I don't know what the excellent parking facilities looked like in 1954, but in 1985, it was a giant gravel lot with weeds. And there was no way to paint spaces or paint lines for spaces. So everybody just kind of lined up in the way they remembered doing it last week. And they let the boys park right on the side of the building next to the door to Ken Mantell's and the back offices.
And of course, it's a beautiful new sportatorium here in 1954. By the time you got there 31 years later, it had seen its better days in terms of at least appearances and building structure and air conditioning and whatever else you want to say. What about the thing here? It says that every seat affording a magnificent view of the ring. Did you ever sit in the seats? I know not while the show was going on. What do you think?
Well, no, because, I mean, we had access to the building. We went in there sometimes to shoot a couple of promos. We went in there sometimes to have, a meeting at the, with the booker. We went in. One time I worked out some stuff with Sunshine. We were doing our angle. And that's one thing that was true. Every seat was fantastic because it was, as we talked about, the seats went straight up. There was a small ringside area, and then the seats on every side, but that left side where that burned down, they just put a wall up. The seats went straight up and around, and so you could see down on everything. And those high shots on camera on the World Class show, that's what it looked like. There was a person everywhere. That says 5,500. Maybe that's possible. I thought by figuring the ticket prices and the gates that were being reported, it was more like 4,000 to 4,500. But then again, when they had control of their own building and their own ticketing, and there was a Texas commission at the time, or at least somebody that they had to pay taxes to, so there may have been a malfunction at the junction when it comes to exactly how many people were in there and how much money they paid. But yeah, I'll tell you, here's what kind of building the Sportatorium was in the 1980s. The guys in the office, Bronco Lubitsch, David Manning, referee Rick Hazard, whoever was going to be in the actual Sportatorium when there wasn't a show going on, there weren't fans or whatever, they were just in there for the offices to have meetings or do a booking meeting, go up in Fritz's office on the second floor, whatever. Some of the guys like David Manning and Rick Hazard would take 22 pistols and go into the arena part of the Sportatorium by the light switch and flip the fucking light on and see if they could pick off some of the rats when they started running when the light hit them. That was a sport that was engaged in on off hours at the Sportatorium. So that's what had happened to the building at that point. It was a great atmosphere for wrestling and for a wrestling crowd, but boy, howdy. Like you said, no air conditioning, and we've talked about the giant rats that I've seen that jumped on me one time, the rat bones they found in the bottom of the deep fryer in the concession stand. And there were holes in the wall, as Mama Cornette used to say, big enough to throw a cat through. So it was quite a production.
And by the early 90s, it looked horrible on TV, just dark and empty. But even like in 84, it's already an old building. The way it's lit, the way it's shot and filled up with people, it looks pretty good.
Yeah. That was the world famous Sportatorium. That was, the syndicated television, because of that jam-packed crowd of somebody filling every seat and how close they were to the ring. The audio picked up of that screaming crowd, and you saw people in every camera shot going berserk over what was going on in the ring, and that helped the show. And then, every once in a while, somebody thought they were going to get involved and save the day, and they got those great clips like when the guy confronted Terry Gordy, and Gordy just reached out and just shoved him so hard his fucking feet went over his head. He turned a complete backflip, landed in the front row, and never spilled his beer. Just shit like that would happen in that building. And it was all under the control of World Class Wrestling, the office. There was no independent arena manager. There was the only security was people that World Class hired. The only people working there were people at World Class hired to do the concessions or whatever. So it was completely our own world, and anything could go on in that fucking building.
Well, back to this program here. The game's top stars, men of proven reputation and ability, who have been seen in action here at Pappy's each week, will be seen at the Sportatorium without exception, and plans call for more of the great grapplers of the world to appear at the Industrial Encadas Sports Arena. So make your plans now to attend next Tuesday's gala card, a great action-packed bill of bouts that promises to provide fans with something to remember the end of the Dallas wrestling battle. And there's a joint statement here
And I could almost hear him saying, and all the fans will be left with ecstatic looks on their faces.
A joint statement issued by all concerned. Wrestling wars in Dallas will be confined to those in the ring, and no longer between Ed McLemore of Dallas and Morris Siegel and Frank Burke of Houston, all three of whom were partners until about a year and a half ago in the promotion of wrestling at the Sportatorium. It has been announced by McLemore, Siegel, and Burke that they have formed a corporation which will conduct wrestling bouts at the Sportatorium on Tuesday nights, and it is essentially this combination of men which brought such outstanding wrestling shows to Dallas fans so successfully for 18 years prior to 1952. Here's a quote. Unfortunate misunderstanding caused a severance of many years of friendly association between McLemore and Burke and myself, commented Morris Siegel, and resulted in Ed promoting by himself and Burke and me in association with Norman Clark in a competing promotion. Happily, we have all come to realize that the wrestling fans of Dallas are entitled to the best possible wrestling bouts, which they will get under one roof and under one banner. That's the end of that quote. Norman Clark, who was ordered by his physicians to limit his activities because of a heart condition, will confine his wrestling endeavors.
Wait a minute. A wrestling promoter with a heart?
Will confine his wrestling endeavors to the city of Galveston, where he has promoted wrestling for many years.
We're sending this shit to Stupid Quick down to Galveston. Galveston, oh Galveston. That's where we send the asshole that became Odd Man Out.
And Norman Clark thanks the fans. Promoter Norman Clark, who's been hospitalized in the John Seeley Hospital for 4 of the past 6 weeks by a heart attack, is on hand tonight and issued the following statement of gratitude to Dallas fans. Part of it is cut off because someone wanted to go for the lucky number that day.
Oh.
That's one of those things you have to live with as a program collector. But what are your thoughts here, Jim, on this program, the end of the Dallas Wrestling War, the end of wrestling at Pappy's Showland?
Well, can you think back on any other wrestling war where it was ever solved so amicably and everybody said such nice things about the other side and they all got back together except for the one guy that probably instigated the whole thing they sent down to Galveston? I get the feeling that, we talked about the promotional war between Sheik and Bruiser in 72 to 74 in Indianapolis, or the one in Atlanta, 72 to 74. A lot of things were going on that time period. Or Nick Goulis's problems with Jerry Jarrett, or, whatever the case may be. A lot of times it led to business being hot in that particular area because each side was trying to bring in the best talent, trying to hot shot and trying to, put on the best shows. And for a while, things would really take off and then somebody eventually would lose. Or sometimes it was just such a mismatch that it never really made a difference. Like ICW and the Poffos against Jarrett, it was more of a nuisance thing. But in this case, from what we've been able to piece together from newspaper accounts and from the old programs, this hurt the business in Dallas on both sides. Don't you agree? The Sportatorium was out of action for a year. Everybody had to change buildings. When you were talking about the last time we read from that previous program, they had some gates listed, and both offices were doing much worse than the single office had done the previous year. And it seemed, and I guess this was so underhanded and so cutthroat of a thing, knocking off television feeds, burning buildings, that they damaged not only the established company's business, they damaged the wrestling business to where that fewer people were going to see either one of the shows, and nobody was making any money out of it. And finally, apparently, they realized whatever had instigated the whole thing, which probably nobody will ever know, what real disagreement went on behind closed doors between these guys that had worked together for a while and who knew came in the picture. They probably finally said, what the fuck? We're running ourselves out of business, and we got to fix this. What does it look like to you? Because there's no major cards or big triumphs or hot shot booking that we can tell that went on. It's just down, 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 gloom, despair, and agony, oh me.
Well, there is some booking we could talk about that went on, because didn't Macklemore start doing stuff with Jack Pfeffer?
Well, I mean, there you go. I mean, it's not like great. There wasn't a big stadium show. There wasn't, oh my God, the world title changed hands. This was Texas wrestling at that point, was in that era, fairly small time, and they were making it smaller.
It's interesting with the Atlanta War. At the end of it, Tom Ernesto came out okay. He got hired back by the NWA office to be the booker. Paul Jones obviously stayed, but every other party was kind of in and out. And this one, everyone, other than Norman Clark being hospitalized, everyone ended up back where they were, with the exception of Doc Sarpolis.
That's right. Doc Sarpolis was involved previously. But he had always had a hand in Texas wrestling, especially out in West Texas, and would continue to do so for years, just in different places in Texas.
Well, perhaps if any of the shenanigans went on today, perhaps there'd be a lawsuit.
There might very well be. And that's the question we've got to ask all of the listeners out there today. If somebody has burned down your wrestling arena and you want to get even, if somebody has knocked your live television feed off the air by clipping the cord, cutting the cable, as they say, if somebody has stolen away your entire talent roster, whether it be wrestlers or whether it be just, your immediate family, say you're a spurned paramour, whoever it may be, you want to get even in a court of law, the man to call.
Call Stephen P. News. If you need to sue. An outlaw mud show or two. Those are the rest.
And we didn't even plan ahead of time that a question about old Dallas wrestling would be followed by the perpetrated theme of the old world-class television program in syndication. But nevertheless, speaking of old programs, Stephen P. New, he's running an old program. It's called Justice. That's the program he's running. He's going to get even for you. He'll get even with you if you mess around with him, but he'll get even for you if you retain him. The man that, when Stephen P. New takes action, even the entire state of West Virginia trembles. They go into a state of emergency called by Governor Justice. What a name. Because of Stephen P. New's actions in trying to get legal justice for all the poor incarcerated criminals over there that are being mistreated with their substandard jails. But he does the same thing for nice old ladies walking in the park. If you're a nice old lady walking in the park and somebody comes along and runs you down with a vehicle, well, your family can call Stephen P. New and he'll get even for you. Whether you've been wrongfully terminated, whether you've been poisoned or your health has been compromised, whether you've been cheated out of money, whether you've been lied to by a major greedy corporation that has perpetrated negligence upon you, all of these things are fair game for Stephen P. New at newlawoffice.com, 888-692-8084. He and or his minions. He has tentacles everywhere that reach out and grab perpetrators on behalf of the offended and the damaged, and he will do the same thing for you. And as we know, Stephen answers his phone. If he don't, somebody on his behalf will. And if he can't help you, he will tell you where to go to get help. Stephen P. New at newlawoffice.com, 888-692, did we mention 8084, is the number to call. When you need to get even, you need to call Stephen. The man, the myth, the legend, Brian, his fame and notoriety has spread nationwide and worldwide.
That's right, Stephen P. New, Jim. And of course, before we wrap things up, let's get to something that everyone's talking about today. As we are recording, Tony Khan did a media call for the Ring of Honor pay-per-view this weekend, the one we've reviewed or previewed earlier in the show, the one that is days away, that we haven't heard too much about. You didn't even know the card, and neither did I, to be honest, before we went through it. So we have some audio of Tony, and obviously, even though this is a Ring of Honor call, the big topic ends up being William Regal. And again, this was, as we were recording the earlier portions of the show, this was happening, so we now have the audio here to play for the show. Do you have anything to say?
Well, no, I was listening to your dissertation there, and I wandered off into La La Land. But yeah, you have encapsulated, I think, very succinctly and clearly exactly what we've got going on here and what we're about to listen to Tony Khan.
And this is over an hour, so we're not going to play all of this. So we're going to play some of it.
We're not.
If there's anything else big that we've missed, maybe we'll come back on the Experience or the Drive-Thru next week with it. But let's start. Let's just hear it as it happens. Let's go to the audio of the Tony Khan media call.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining today's media briefing with Tony Khan. Just a few quick items before we get started. Please make sure your phone is unmuted. This allows us to open your line to ask a question. So, if you'd like to ask a question, please unmute your microphones now. Once you've asked your question,
Lily Tomlin.
we will mute your line to avoid any background noise during the response.
One ringy
To
dingy.
indicate that you'd like to ask a question, please click the hand icon on the go-to dashboard. You can also type a question in at any time in the question section on the dashboard. Today's session will last approximately 55 minutes.
It's like a test.
And we will make
Jesus.
every attempt.
I feel like I'm taking the
to include your
SATs.
question
The
time
dashboard, is
permitting.
everybody sitting in their car?
As always, please note that no live streaming or broadcasting of this call is permitted.
We're on a delay.
We will be sharing an audio recording of the session afterwards. I'll now turn it over to our moderator, Jim.
Me? What? How did I get involved with this?
I'm so happy to hear you're back involved with AEW. What do you have to say about this, Mr. Moderator?
Well, I'm the soul of moderation. If you look up moderation in the dictionary, you get a picture of me. But no, is there who else is named, who is Jim there? Jim's the moderator and Bill's on Gorilla. We don't know who the fuck's.
Other than the Von Erichs, who gets introduced just by first name? Here is Kevin. Here is Jim. Oh my God, of course, it's Jim.
All right, well, he's going to moderate this thing, right?
Well, here's our moderator, Jim.
Thanks, Robin. Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today for this special call with Tony Khan to discuss the upcoming Ring of Honor Final Battle pay-per-view event this Saturday. Just some quick housekeeping in the interest of time and giving everyone opportunities to as many people as possible. We're going to ask that you kindly refrain from asking two-parted questions. We have a lot of people on the line here, a lot to talk about today, so we want to get everybody
No follow-up.
So get started.
the best chances possible to connect with Tony. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Tony now for some opening thoughts, then we're going to open up the lines for your questions. Tony.
Thank you very much, Jim. Hey, everyone. I really appreciate everyone coming in today. This is a little different. We normally have done these on Thursday, but I thought it would be good to cover the whole week. We have a lot of great wrestling coming this week and a lot of things happening in both AEW and ROH. It's a huge week for us. We have Dynamite tonight on TBS, Rampage Friday on TNT, and then Ring of Honor Final Battle on Saturday afternoon. It's a little bit different trying the show out in the afternoon time slot. We're excited about that.
You think?
And there were so many things to cover.
He's so positive and upbeat, right? He's it's hard not to like him.
We've got some great footage of the semi-tractor trailer going over the side of the cliff, burning into flames below in the valley. It was great. We roasted marshmallows. We're going to bring that to you
this week, and I really thought it would be good to talk on Wednesday. And something I wanted to cover, there's been a number of issues that have come up this week, different questions, and one question that we've gotten so much that I thought I should just lead off and talk to you about it is a question about the status of William Regal in AEW and also in Ring of Honor, where he's helped us out. And I thought it would be something good to cover. It's a lot of personal stuff, and I have a ton of respect for William Regal, and that's why I thought it would be good to just talk about it here. To go back and really talk about some of these things, I would go back a few months. These last several months have been crazy. And going back to All Out, obviously there were a lot of things happened coming out of All Out. And after that, the next couple weeks ended up being a really important time for the company. We made a lot of changes on the show, and frankly, it was all hands on deck, and we had to completely overhaul a lot of things. And I was really pleased with the success we had. It ended up being one of our best periods we've ever had for TV ratings, and it was the best run of ratings we've really had all year. And it's not the first time this year we've had to make a lot of changes. For different reasons, there have been a number of times this year where things have come up out of our control. And earlier this year, around Double or Nothing and our show at the Forum, those were hugely successful events for us. But then that week, coming out of it, there was some attrition as we had a number of major injuries. And going into Forbidden Door, for example, I was so pleased with how Forbidden Door came out. It was commercially and critically one of the most successful things we've done. And the run up to it was very challenging with injuries, in particular to Bryan Danielson and CM Punk, and had to make a lot of changes.
What was he claiming he was going to address a minute ago?
William Regal. But he's talking about...
My head is starting to hurt.
Apparently, he's saying there was a lot of things happening in the business and in his personal life as this William... I mean, he's going to say this, I'm assuming, as this William Regal stuff was happening.
Maybe if he wrote these things down ahead of time. Go ahead.
He's speaking from the heart, maybe, but let's go back to this.
Out again, a lot of changes. We had the Grand Slam Tournament of Champions and some great shows at that time after All Out. And shows in Buffalo and Albany, really strong events that led into AEW Grand Slam, which is maybe our most important TV franchise each year. And at that time, I felt like things were really coming together, and I was really proud how the company had all rallied leading into Grand Slam.
Beyond anything, is he now painting too rosy a picture of everything we've seen in the last few months on TV?
That's the problem. I'm not trying to blister Tony, but it's just obvious that he is very defensive with going over this in excruciating detail. Every question that he answers of a sensitive topic begins with a dissertation on everything that's happened positively for the last 6 months, whether or not it's even related. And I just wish sometimes he would get to address the meat of the matter a little more quickly. Maybe it's just me.
Let's go back to Tony.
And also going into Grand Slam, I had some personal challenges in my life and my family's life. And I was going to tell you about that today. And I don't think 99% of you would have had any idea about any of this. So going into Grand Slam, last year my dad was at Grand Slam, and I was really proud to have him at the event. He was not able to come this year, and the lead into Grand Slam was very challenging for me personally. My mother had a stroke after All Out before Grand Slam, and my whole family, we were really obviously very, very concerned. And it was a really stressful time for my family, but also there were a lot of really challenging things happening around the company, AEW, and they needed to be addressed. And so there's just all kinds.
Let me stop it there for a second, because we've talked so much about the fallout of All Out, the backstage confrontation, the Bucks and Omega going into Punk's dressing room and the fight that broke out afterwards, the ramifications of it, the investigation, everything that's going on. Now to hear that in the middle of all that, because right after it, he was dealing with all this. What do you think?
Well, and again, Tony has managed in this situation, and as we are hearing more of the audio, it will come out, to babyface himself by talking about his mother being sick. And I'm not making fun of Tony's mother being sick, and I wish her the best. And It's not, we're not sitting here going, Tony, your sickness in the family or whatever the fuck. It's that this is what has been happening. You can't tell me that this guy, does he ever sleep? You can see it unraveling. He's whatever jobs or positions he had with the football team and with all the other things that he was doing before the wrestling started. Then he started the wrestling and people question, well, how can he do all this? Because he insists on being the head of creative. Who knows the only creative? I don't fucking know how that works, but he insists on being the booker. He insists on being the boss, even though he doesn't insist on being the boss when people are upset with him. He insists on doing all of this stuff. And on top of this, his mother's ill and his wrestlers are fighting and the ratings are dribbling away. And this is what happens when you try to do something of this size with inexperienced people or lack of people to begin with in positions. Tony Khan is trying to do the job of at least 4 or 5 experienced people with all this other shit going on. And that's, I think, what we're seeing in the product and the booking, which more and more people are starting to see doesn't make a lick of sense. And everybody's questioning. And I'm not trying to browbeat Tony because he's got illness in his family now, too, for heaven's sake. But one person can't do all this shit, especially when that person had no earthly clue what he was getting into to begin with and apparently wouldn't listen to anybody else. And so now the thing with Regal, well, go ahead and play some more, but he's going to tie this in. But he's become a babyface as a result of this. So that's wonderful. But I don't think it's all right. Go ahead, and then we'll get into Regal when he gets into Regal.
Stuff happening, and so that's why my dad was not at Grand Slam this year. But everybody came together, and the event was tremendous. And following a great Grand Slam, my mother had been at the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville, and they weren't really able to figure out why she had this stroke, and that was pretty scary. And they actually had let her go home, and they said they would, keep doing tests and stuff. And we had this strong run of ratings in AEW, and I kept plowing ahead at work. And it was at the week after Grand Slam. We had another great show, I thought, but Hurricane Ian reared its head, but we still came damn close to hitting that million number we go for every week, and stuff at home with my family. My mom was home, so that was really positive, but obviously we're all still really concerned. And then the following week we went out to celebrate the 3-year anniversary of AEW Dynamite on TBS. And then my mom had a second stroke. And now, we've gone from incredibly worried to just panicked as a family. And so there's just so many things happening at this time. And this was right around my 40th birthday, which was probably about as low-key of a 40th birthday as you could have. I watched Monday Night Football at my parents' house with my parents. My mom was hooked up to
what channel? Tell us what channel you were watching.
My mom's surgery would go okay. And that same night, I got a phone call, and it was saying that William Regal had approached Mega and said that, and it was all very legitimate, valid stuff. Basically, he's got a son who works in another wrestling promotion, and he really wanted us at the end of the year when we had the option to renew his contract. He was asking that we would not nothing bad. We're having a great time working together, but that this is an opportunity for him to go back and work in these really golden years of his career with his son and do things he likes to do, coaching, and he's got friends that he would like to go back and coach with. And it's a very complex situation for AEW.
Allegedly, that's what he was supposed to be doing in AEW, was helping coach, right? So I know his son is not there, but Tony basically just said that Regal said, well, I like all those people over there and they listen to me. And plus my son is there. And now that the old man that fired me is gone and one of my best friends is in charge, I'd like to go back there where I wanted to be to begin with. And with all due respect to Tony's family and anything else, yes, there's a family heartstring tugging contingent to this, but and it was probably the perfect time for William Regal to present that argument to Tony in that fashion when he's having, problems in his family. But it still boils down to Regal would have never left if Vince hadn't fired him. As soon as Triple H got back in charge, he wanted him to come back, and he wanted to come back. And yes, his son is there, and so are all the other people that he used to coach that actually listened to him. So it's a great delivery on this story, but isn't that basically still what the situation is? He had an option at the end of the year. He could have picked it up, and William Regal could be miserable being somewhere he doesn't want to be. And even if he was trying to be professional about it, that would probably still cause further issues. Or Tony can just say, well, you know what, we had you for a year, and that's, what he's done.
Why is it a 1-year deal with an option?
Probably because Regal figured exactly what's happened. He's either thinking, well, Vince is 78, and who knows how, I don't want to, tie myself up for too long, but I need a job. Paul may have said, sit tight and don't fucking do anything for too long, but get you a job. So with Tony not examining all this with a clear head, because he usually doesn't, he might have thought, well, I'm getting Regal for 3 years. He's my friend. He'll stick with me. It's just, he's older, so he doesn't want to, do anything long-term. There's an option after each year, whatever the case, however it was presented. Regal got a job until situation changed where he wanted to be. And, who knows if everybody in the company had said, oh, William Regal, we'd love to learn from you, or whatever, or if there'd been better management, if that comment is to be taken as something that Regal said, the maturity and management issue, whatever the case. It's still, he didn't want to leave to begin with, and now that he has a chance to go back, that's what he wants to do. And are you going to keep the guy there chained to as New Jack used to say, chained in the bowels of a slave ship? Or are you going to let him go so that he doesn't, just naturally be miserable and kind of bring everybody else down around him?
I renew the option until I can finish playing out the program I have, and then I release him as per his wishes. That's what I would do.
But here's the thing, is if the option was up at the end of the year anyway, I don't know why that they couldn't at least have run this for 8 weeks or whatever the fuck. And is okay. I don't know why it had to be, well, let's tell him off 1 week with Moxley, and then MJF can knock him out next week and we'll never see his ass again, or whatever. Go ahead. Is there more of this?
Let's go back to Tony Khan. Yes.
Because he's a huge part of what we're doing on screen, and we really value him, and there's multiple storylines that he's involved in at this point. And as we were going to Toronto that week, obviously I had a lot on my mind. And after the second stroke, they found my mom had a spot on her heart. And so I'm probably doing a bad job with the medical explanation of it, but they said that if they could remove the spot from her heart, then that was the best chance we had to stop the strokes from happening. And through this whole thing, my sister and my dad, I mean, they were heroes in this whole thing. And my sister especially is like the hero of this thing. She was there as much as she possibly could have been on my mom's side. And I went and spent as much time as I could every night in the hospital. And so it was, as we went to Toronto, my mom was going down to have that surgery. And obviously there were other things happening too in the world of wrestling that were really important. And this was the timing of the request from Regal, and I really had to think about it. And both those shows in Toronto were very successful. And then at the end of the week, my mom had this heart surgery. And when I got back, my dad and my sister had already been there at the hospital since the previous day. And that weekend, which would be, I think, the 14th, 15th, 16th, I went in. I watched Rampage in my mom's hospital room that Friday night with her as she was sleeping, and I definitely, I think I tweeted.
Good God, no wonder she has a bad heart. He's making her watch Rampage?
Oh, stop. Will you be nice?
I'm sorry, but what a thing to do. Hey, Mom, you're in a hospital with a bad heart. Let's watch my wrestling show.
He would have known what that meant. And there's a lot to think about here. And we had a Jags game that weekend against the Indianapolis Colts. And my mom's recovering from a major operation that she just had, which had gone, thankfully, really well. But it is a really challenging recovery. And so I came back from Toronto, and we're all just really grateful. My mom was making it through this operation, and she was in good condition, but it was a long road ahead. And so if I thought my mom was hooked up to a lot of machines before, I got back, and good Lord, there's just dozens of machines. And when I got back, my family was pretty exhausted, and I kind of tagged in. And then I found myself spending the nights in the hospital, and they were spending the days there. And we played the Indianapolis Colts that weekend, and I went to Indianapolis and then flew back. And then I went back to the Mayo Clinic on the Sunday night. I think that's October 16th, I want to say. And,
I'm going to just stop it. He's telling his life story. This is supposed and I feel awful about what he's going through. And trust me, no one can relate to just about everything he's gone through more than me. However, this is a wrestling media call. He was going to answer the questions that everyone's had, and everyone has them, about William Regal. And again, I feel awful about what he's going through, but this is all about him.
Well, and besides, I think we're seeing the problem is that Tony Khan is not a public speaker. He's not a spokesman. He's not a public person. He's not suited to have the spotlight on him because he doesn't make a clear, concise, cohesive statement about anything. And I know it's obviously eating him up and problematic that he's talking about all these horrible things he's gone through, but is this the venue for all of this detail? Or could it possibly be easier to get this story across if he eliminated what he had for lunch on Thursday, the 17th of September, or whatever the case? Go ahead.
Again, my dad, my sister, and my mom's best friend, they've been there a lot and during the days, and I was trying to spend the nights there. And my mom was asleep, and I got a message from Regal, and it was asking if we could talk. And I made time to talk to him, and I went outside the hospital, and so I'm sitting out on a park bench out in front of the Mayo Clinic on Sunday night. And we had this really long, good talk, and it was very positive. And he really had, I think, good intentions, I'd like to say, for why he wanted to go back. And it made a lot of sense to me that he would want to work with his son and be with his son. And he said to me, honestly, and it made sense, given where you're sitting right now, does it make sense to you that I would want to go back and be with my son? And at that point where I was sitting, yeah, it really did make a lot of sense to me. And frankly, the last thing I wanted to do at that moment was prevent any parent and any child, any son from being together. As I was sitting on a park bench at the Mayo Clinic in Jacksonville, while my mom was sleeping inside.
And well, there you go.
I feel awful for this guy.
Yeah.
I really, really do. However, I mean, and I don't want to say anything bad about William Regal, but if you know this guy's going through this and you're hitting him with that shit, I don't know. That's not the coolest thing either. Maybe I'm thinking of it wrong, but I know. Yeah. Again, I can relate to Tony.
There is that element of, well, this will be the thing that will get this argument across the finish line at this particular moment. And it's not even really that rotten of William Regal to make that argument, because he probably feels some of it himself legitimately. But this is why Tony is in over his head with all of these things, because he is such a nice guy and he wants to be friends with, and he doesn't have most business people at this level yet where they've started a company and are trying to get it over whatever the fuck. They're still hungry to make money. He's not, because he doesn't need to be, because they'll never run out of their money. So, can you see Vince McMahon? I know a lot of people are, well, Vince is an asshole, but Vince ran the most successful wrestling company in the world for 30 fucking however many years or whatever the fuck it was. Vince McMahon would go to the hospital and visit his mother and then fucking go cut the balls off somebody else's mother. I don't know how to even phrase that, but can you see Vince McMahon making any of these statements? Hey, I've always said business people are pricks, and the bigger the business, the bigger the prick. And Tony's obviously not a prick. He's just in over his head and swimming with sharks, or piranhas, as my old friend Howard Brody would say.
It's also a dangerous precedent to set. If Andrade said, I want to go be with my wife, does that change everything? Or has he said that and it just wasn't honored the same way William Regal wanting to be with his son and confronting Tony with that when Tony's going through a pretty harrowing experience for a child?
Well, he's 40. I know a son.
No, but a child of a parent. A child of a parent going through something.
A child of a parent. The son of a sea cook. For all you arsenic and old lace fans out there, are we done with this audio?
I don't think he's done with the William Regal story, no.
Okay.
Recovering from a major operation. And so I told him, I do think, I don't know how we're going to do it yet. I'm going to have to do a lot of thinking. It's going to require more changes. I referenced earlier, there's been a lot of that this year that we've tried to make the best of everything. And I really do believe we've been able to have great events through it all. There were a lot of changes going into Forbidden Door, but I thought it was one of the best pay-per-view shows of the year. There were a lot of changes going into Full Gear, but really I thought it was one of the best events of the year. And it was the start of a new period for AEW. And I had to think about that, but I also had to think about family. And given that's, where I was at and where he was at, it made a lot of sense that we would try to accommodate him and that request. As I was sitting there, praying that my mom was going to be able to recover from this major operation she just had that weekend. And given where I found myself and given where he was, I just thought it made sense maybe that I would not exercise that option here. So I said I would consider it and started working on changes, and it's basically another complete overhaul. And like I said, we had made major changes going into Forbidden Door. We made major changes coming out of All Out, going into Grand Slam. But these were really successful periods for us. Forbidden Door, it wasn't the smoothest run in, but it ended up being an amazing show. All Out, coming out of it, is probably the most successful period of TV we've had this year, and there were so many great shows there. With great matches in Albany and Buffalo, leading into Grand Slam, and then coming out of that, some great matches in Philly and an awesome 3-year anniversary show in DC. And I was really proud of what we did in Toronto. And then after that call with Regal, we had Title Tuesday. And from then on, we made changes to get to Full Gear and through Full Gear as strong as possible. And I thought Title Tuesday was a great show. To say we leaned into things with Regal and MJF would be an understatement, but I think that was a real life situation too. And that 20-minute promo was outstanding. It was tremendous storytelling, I think. And again, it set a table for a different direction that helped us get to where everyone wanted to be. Later that week, we had
to help us get where everyone wanted to be. That's interesting.
Which is out of here. And what did I just say this last week? It looks like they've been changing this shit every week on the fly. Apparently that's because they were changing this shit every week on the fly.
For William Regal, not for a top star or anything, no disrespect to Regal in this regard, but for a manager of a stable on the show, they're rewriting the entire main event program.
Yeah, remember
insane.
I said even after Punk was hurt or the media scrum, whichever, then they were still changing things from week to week. Was it based on these phone calls going back and forth now? Are we going to have him or are we not? Are we going to have him? How long are we going to have it? Blah, blah, blah.
Rampage live at Daly's place in Jacksonville. And I sat with Regal for over 90 minutes in my office afterwards. And this is probably the longest one-on-one in-person talk I've ever had with him. And, you know, we talked and I told him I'll make major sacrifices to this company to do the best thing for you and your family, because this is a family-first company. And the person I'm releasing, you know, later this month, who's still with us, I think it's fair to say, through the holiday, has been an essential part of multiple TV stories, and it's still an essential part of the TV as of tonight. And we've done a lot of things to help him create the best situation he can for his family. And for me, my mom's doing really well, and we're really grateful. And it's amazing. We just had this great Thanksgiving, and she's doing better. It seems like better and better every day. And I'm so grateful for that. And I'm grateful to my dad and especially my sister for being there for every moment of the recovery. And also I'm grateful that I was there a lot, as much as I could be. And it was probably, in a lot of ways, the most time I spent with my mom this year. And even though I spend a good amount of time with her, and it, you know, where we're at, I thought we had a great pay-per-view show, and now for Lord Regal, I'm wishing him the best, and he knows I wish him the best, and we've had conversations even this week, and he's, you know, I think he's grateful for what I did, but also I know he enjoyed his time here, and I've enjoyed the time with him, and it's hard to see him go, but it was a challenge to arrive in a place where we were able to make it compelling, and he's not gone yet. Now we're going into Wednesday Night Dynamite.
Let me say something. William Regal was going to say whatever he had to say to get out of that contract.
Yeah.
As soon as Paul Levesque was put in charge, William Regal started plotting his way to get back to WWE.
Well, now don't make him sound like Simon Bar Sinister. He wasn't plotting. He was just saying, I got to fucking get back there. Is there any doubt? Can anybody say anything else? I mean, it's commendable that Tony Khan feels that way about letting somebody go and be with their family at this time of year, blah, blah, blah. But there would have been some pitch, some reason he wanted to go back, whether his son was involved or whatever the fuck else. That was the idea that was arrived at, I'm sure. Wouldn't you think, oh, how the fuck can I pitch this to Tony to let me out of this? So
I can't think of too many other things that would have done it.
You know, it's optimum timing. Timing is everything, as Abdullah the Butcher used to say.
Let's see if he's done with this question.
I hope so.
We have to at least get through the one question.
Big week with the Ring of Honor pay-per-view. And, you know, in pro wrestling, you have people butting heads in the ring and also backstage. And it took a lot of hard work to get to where we are. In the end, like I said, Full Gear was an incredible success for this company, commercially and critically. You know, it's one of our best pay-per-view shows we've had, and this year we've had a lot of great shows. Despite challenges, we've been able to keep the company strong throughout the year. And, you know, in the end, there's a lot of happy endings here, and I'm most happy that my mom is doing better, and that whole situation probably led me to a place where I had a better understanding of the reasons why Lord Regal would want to be in a place where he could work with his son as much as he wants and be with family.
He took advantage of you.
I probably won't be able to facilitate every family reunion, but I do try to make this a family-first company, and especially in this situation.
Oh, I'm getting mad. He got taken advantage of by fucking Regal. He got hired as a favorite of Moxley and Danielson and the guys that wanted him there, and then as soon as he got there, he came there in March was his debut, someone said on TV. When was Levesque put in charge?
Well, didn't the illegal paralegal come out in April or May?
He was there a month, and he's trying to come up with a plan to get out of there. This is ridiculous. And they bent over backwards to give him an exit because he's had now 3 different exits on TV.
he's exit stage right, exit stage left. He's exiting all over the place. We can't get this fucking guy to quit leaving.
Let's see if it's a question over. Hold on.
I don't know.
That's what we've done. And, you know, there's a lot of exciting things happening in AEW now. We could talk about, there's a lot of exciting things happening in Ring of Honor going into Final Battle. And I'm excited to talk about those. And now I can open it up for your questions, if that's okay.
Oh, good Lord.
All right, now he's going to open it up for questions.
Do we have any more questions? Or are we free to leave?
He's very sympathetic when talking about his personal issues, but again, he's the head of a company just airing all of his personal stuff here on a media call for a pay-per-view for Ring of Honor.
It sounds like he's talking to a psychiatrist when he's doing some, and I'm not just talking now about his mother being sick. I'm talking about he just rambles on, and there's a lot of back padding involved, and Tony doesn't seem like an egotistical person. Tony seems like a very defensive person that can't understand how that everybody doesn't think that all of his shit is great, because all of his invisible fictitious fans in his E-Federation that he gets the feedback from likes all the shit that he does. But it's just the real people that criticize him, and he can't figure out why. And I think there's some element of therapy sessions going on in these diatribes. Is that the proper word? Hold on. While you determine whether there's anything else to be seen here, I'm looking up diatribe.
Well, let's see what the first question is.
Yeah, absolutely, Tony. Thanks for your time on that. Thanks for your thoughts, for sure. I'm
That's his PR guy thanking him, but okay.
sure everyone really appreciates him. So we're going to start with Stuart Myrick from KTXX FM, The Horn in Austin. And we're going to follow Stuart with Brandon Thurston from WrestleNomics.
All right, let's at least go through Brandon Thurston because he actually does good reporting.
All right, and by the way, diatribe, I'm saying a bitter, abusive denunciation. So maybe that's not quite... But it also can be a lecture, and I think that's what we got. But amazingly enough, diatribe is right above diazepam, which is an anti-anxiety drug. Maybe that's what I should be looking for Tony. All right, let's go to Brandon.
No, this is not Brandon. This is the guy from The Horn.
Well, fuck The Horn. Just tell me what Brandon wants to know.
I don't know what the timestamp is on that. Hold on.
Stuart, you ready to go?
Yes, I am. Tony, first of all, thanks for your time. Thoughts and prayers for your family as your mother recovers. Having dealt with that myself with my family, I can attest to the strain that it can put on you. So thoughts and prayers. And oh, by the way, welcome back to Austin.
See, now he puts every reporter in the position where they have to say that to start off the thing, because otherwise, now that it's been started, if you don't do it, you're the asshole.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate that.
quickly, just do you have any updates
Quickly.
on the possibility of Ring of Honor returning to television on a weekly basis?
Oh, good question.
Well, whichever platform it is, I'm really glad you asked me that. It's a very timely question with Final Battle coming up. I've got these two amazing companies, and AEW has always come first and foremost for me, yet Ring of Honor is really important, and I don't want it to take a backseat to anything. I also don't want it to always be the focus of the AEW TV. So after this week, I will really be limiting how much Ring of Honor you see on the shows. And
as soon as we get the belt off Jericho, we'll not see a lot of it anymore.
A good amount of Chris Jericho and Claudio's story, but a lot of the other Ring of Honor champions or the Ring of Honor matches, some of them have been on Rampage or even at times Elevation and Dark, and doing things using our other platforms like streaming YouTube and things like that. So for the future of the TV, I'll address it after Final Battle. It's a really good question, and I think let's get through a really big week, starting with Dynamite tonight on TBS, Rampage Friday on TNT, and then obviously Final Battle this weekend. And I think it's something I would like to address, and it's a good question that you asked, but I'm gonna.
But I just won't answer it.
Yeah, at this point, is a Ring of Honor pay-per-view a true Ring of Honor pay-per-view, or is it AEW in your house?
It's not a true Ring of Honor pay-per-view unless Gary Juster is lost driving around the town trying to find a Starbucks. Keep going with this thing.
Saturday, and then I can talk a little bit more about it there if it's okay. Thank you for asking and setting the table for Saturday.
Thanks, Stuart. Okay, as promised, I'm going to call on Brandon Thurston from WrestleNomics, and Joel Torres from Contralona will follow Brandon. Brandon.
Hi, Tony. First, I want to extend best wishes to you and your family.
Thanks, man. I really appreciate it.
I wanted to ask you about the Rampage ratings. The rating on Friday was a new low, but it's just sort of a data point in a wider trend. I was wondering if you could talk about what you think the reason is. Has promoting Ring of Honor on Rampage played a role in that, and what can you do to improve ratings?
I definitely definitely am looking to put strong matches on Rampage. I think we'll have a big card this week. And, with the depth of the roster, I think now it's a time for me to really put all hands on deck to put the strongest shows I can on Friday. And I always try to listen to the feedback from the fans. So going forward, I'm going to try to put things on the Friday show that I think will have the best chance to bring in that audience.
Hold on one second. If he just thinks that you can just put big matches on Friday night and plug them on Wednesday night.
Strong matches is what
Strong matches and plug them on Wednesday night, and that's going to change anything when nothing on that program from week to week follows anything else. And it's the furthest thing from an episodic program. We talked about it earlier in this show, blah, blah, blah. You don't need more talent on it. You need less talent, good talent. Focus on the talent that's on it. You don't need, what did he say, big matches or strong matches or whatever. You need programs that will hook people from week to week that might build a fucking audience. Or just a standalone hour of cold matches with dipshits that we barely ever fucking see anywhere else. That ain't gonna cut it. Go ahead.
What has historically done really well, because we've had a lot of good history of shows that have done well on Friday. And, there's people that have drawn.
There was one.
Spots, and then look at people that necessarily haven't drawn as much in those spots, and what can I do to help those people? And on the other hand, probably what can I do to put the show in the best position, utilizing people that have a history of drawing well on that show.
He's gone.
Brandon. Joe Torres from Contralona.
I just want to see if he continues to trend.
I'm going to follow Joel with a write-in question from Max Everett from Sportskeeda Wrestling. Joel.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi Tony, how are you? First of all, I lost my dad a few months ago.
See, this is what it starts.
Through,
See, now everyone has
I'll tell you what, though, he's inadvertently slipped this thing, because if it hadn't been for him cutting that promo and telling people his mother had been sick and getting that sympathy, everybody would be going, "You blithering dipshit." So this is one of Tony's better. It wasn't delivered well, but the message got across. And he appears to be slipping the shit for this.
Well, the message has got across, and I don't know if we need to listen to too much more of this. Again, this has just happened a little bit before as we were recording, and we can monitor and see if there's anything else worth talking about, but I think we've heard enough. And Swami's going.
Like the sign they held up in Greensboro in 1990, we have heard enough. We both, Brian and I, hope that Tony's mother is feeling much better and that his family is happy for Christmas. But this guy needs some help, and now the problem has become that he's surrounded himself, the closest people in his ear now, his little sidekick, Megan, and the EVPs and the Ocho, are either in over their heads themselves or out for themselves. And it's going to be real interesting. See whether he can keep together without being wrapped up in one of those long sleeve jackets and put in a rubber room at the Puzzle Factory.
Well, Jim, there it is. Tony Khan's comments, at least as many as we would play here at the end of the show. For anyone who's going to complain, "Oh, you played too much Tony," it's at the end of the show. It's already been a long show. It's been a very long show. So we're not going to play any songs this week.
Tony is used to speaking at length after the end of long shows.
Well, as I said, it's a long show. No song this week, but we'll return next week. And again, as we said at the top of the show, send in your original material with some good lyrics for the new song contest, a new intro and outro for the drive-thru and the experience to CornyDriveThru@gmail.com. You guys know where to find us on Twitter, the official Jim Cornette YouTube channel. Of course, patreon.com/Cornette to access the archive going back to 2013. The show is sponsored by the law office of Stephen P. New, 888-692-8084. Get even with Stephen at newlawoffice.com. Cornette's Collectibles at jimcornette.com. Until they decide to stop this at jimcornette.com. But until this weekend on The Experience, and next week right back here in the drive-thru, the quickest outro ever. For Jim Cornette, I'm the great Brian Last. Tally-ho!
Tally-ho!